So Ms. Grijalva,
Yes.
you may want to add a little more personal detail on former board member Ed.
Yes, even.
You good now?
Miguel, Kevin, can you hear us? Ms. Grijalva, we're good to go.
Okay, thank you so much for your patience. Today is Thursday, September 9th, and we are meeting on a Thursday because Rosh Hashanah was on Tuesday and Wednesday. So to our Jewish community, Shana Tova. Can I call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call, please? Oh, I apologize. We're going to go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. And we have David Cabrera. I see you there. He's in 5th grade at Fruit Tendler Elementary. His interests are David likes to read and build with Legos. He is involved in swimming, roller hockey, and running. David enjoys spending time outside riding his bike and skating. He likes to go camping with his family. David plays the violin and the piano. David, would you like to go ahead and lead us in the pledge?
Sure. Please stand. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much for joining us, David. We really appreciate it. How's everything going with school?
Good.
Yeah? Well, this is your last year at Fruit Tendler.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order and roll call.
Ms. Counts,
Here.
Dr. Givosha,
Here.
Ms. Luna Rose,
Here.
Ms. Shaw,
Here.
Ms. Grijalva.
Here. Thank you. Now we're on land acknowledgement statement. And I see Emery Jackson has joined us. Thank you for being here, Emery. I'll let you all know Emery is a senior at Tucson High Magnet School. I just visited there yesterday. We might have been walking in the same halls. Emery is a member of the Navajo Nation. He is an active member of the Badger community by serving on the student council, playing football and volleyball, and being on the wrestling team. Emery is also in the medical assistant program through JTED. He plans to apply for New York University and Penn State University with hopes of pursuing a medical degree. In his free time, Emery enjoys cooking and baking as a way of relaxing. You are very busy, Emery. Thank you so much for taking time to join us.
On behalf of the governing board of the Tucson Unified School District, I, Emery Jackson, acknowledge that the schools, buildings, and facilities of the Tucson Unified School District reside on the ancestral homeland of the Ohlone Nation and the federally recognized tribal land of the Pasco Yaqui tribe.
Thank you so much. So the Pledge of Allegiance is on 2 and 2.3, so we'll just move on to, thank you so much, Emery, for joining us, and good luck in the rest of your senior year and all of your future endeavors.
Thank you.
Dr. Trujillo, agenda adjustments.
Yes. Yes, President Grijalva, members of the board. We have a few agenda adjustments for the evening. I would like to recommend that immediately following call to the audience, we move up items 6.2 and 6.3 for the Choya community. We have some celebratory items honoring some longtime Choya community icons. We'd like to put them at the top of the agenda. And then following items 6.2 and 6.3, we'd like to move up our reoccurring COVID readiness report, item 7.3, and our reoccurring transportation update for the community, item 7.4.
Board members, any other requests? Okay. Can I get a motion to accept these agenda adjustments?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll
Ms. Luna
second.
Rose. And thank you, Ms. Counts, for seconding. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. So now, Dr. Trujillo, we're on the superintendent's report.
Yes, President Grijalva, members of the governing board, members of the viewing public, Tucson Unified Community, welcome. I hope everybody enjoyed the 3-day holiday weekend, and a very, very special greeting to our Jewish community, both here in the Tucson Unified School District and throughout Pima County as we begin the Jewish High holiday season. Some items of importance for tonight's superintendent's report. Our enrollment. Wanted to give everybody a glimpse of what the TUSD enrollment looks like after the 10-day drops have been administered. For those of you in the viewing public, it is a statutory requirement for schools throughout the state of Arizona and districts to automatically withdraw students that have accrued 10 consecutive absences in a row. We have executed that 10-day drop, and our enrollment stands as 773 students up, increased as compared to the 40th day for 2021. The most pronounced enrollment increases we have seen have been at the K-8 level, where the district has increased by 229, and at the high school level, where the district has increased by 731 students. Unfortunately, as in years past, we are still struggling with middle school enrollment, as our middle schools are down 149. But a tremendous, big, bright, shining light in this first post-pandemic year where students are back for in-person learning. Kindergarten has had an absolutely amazing bounce back. The enrollment remains steady above 3,000, and this is the largest student increase of any single grade that we've experienced in our K-12 band. So good news for enrollment. What comes next? We will be watching enrollment as we move towards the 40th day. The district, of course, funding is determined for the district for the following fiscal year according to our 40-day average of students enrolled in the district for days 1 through 40. So we will continue to keep the public and the board updated. Tonight, the governing board will be providing guidance to the administration regarding next steps in its ongoing attempts to recover $10.6 million in DSEG funding owed to the Tucson Unified School District by the state of Arizona. Of course, on August 18th, the State Court of Appeals overturned a previous decision by the Arizona Tax Court requiring the legislature to repay outstanding desegregation monies for the fiscal year 19 and 20 to Tucson Unified School District. That Arizona Tax Court decision, of course, was reversed at the Court of Appeals level. At stake now is $10.6 million in DSEG funding. That, of course, exceeded the 1% property tax cap in fiscal years 19 and 20. But I want to reassure everybody, all of our employees that are watching, if you have DSEG funded positions, and all of our parents that enjoy all of our outstanding DSEG programs, there is no impact. There are no cuts imminent for this year. There is no impact for this year. We had a couple of factors really help us out to make sure there was no budgetary impact. Number one, the receipt of enrollment stability grant funds. Number two, the 3 distributions that we have seen from ESSER 1, 2, and 3, and a carry forward for the district's maintenance and operations budget have really helped us here to minimize, if not eliminate, the missing $10.6 million. It's also important to note that as long as the case remains active, TUSD is not responsible for repayment of these funds until the court deems the case closed. Tonight, our governing board, as a part of this public agenda, they will vote on what our next steps and course of action will be as they provide direction to the administration and our legal team. A quick update regarding classroom COVID-19 pool testing. As discussed at our previous governing board meeting, the district is partnering with Concentric. Concentric is the vendor that was identified by the Arizona Department of Health Services to be the designated provider for schools and districts throughout the state that want to implement classroom-level COVID-19 pool testing. Unfortunately, in our ongoing discussions with Concentric, Concentric does not have its own staff. Concentric does rely on third-party staffing agencies to be able to get on the ground and facilitate the pool testing at the classroom level. This factor has significantly slowed our rollout. The first 20 schools selected for phase 1 of the district's pool testing rollout, they will be kicking off their initial testing on September 20th. Concentric right now is in the process of staffing for the phase 2 rollout. Phase 2 will encompass the rest of the district. So we will be targeting the middle of the month of October, of course, to get the rest of the district online and implementing the opt-in voluntary classroom-level COVID-19 testing. Classroom-level testing, of course, is voluntary. It's going to require parental consent. And we have now facilitated our training for the first 20 schools. We're going to hear more details in tonight's agenda when we hear from the team on our COVID-19 readiness report. We received some amazing news for an outstanding educator from the Pueblo community, and we're going to do a more formal presentation and acknowledgement at the September 23rd meeting. But this award is so prestigious, it's breaking. So we want to make sure and share the good news this evening. Congratulations, Cristobal Santa Cruz. He is the recipient of a very, very prestigious award from Yale University. And this prestigious award, the 2021 Yale Education Award, this award recognizes and honors outstanding educators that have had a significant influence and impact on the lives of Yale undergraduate students. And the cool thing about this award is that educators are nominated by the students, by the Yale undergraduates, as they matriculate into Yale University. The nominations are reviewed by the Yale Undergraduate Admissions Office, and this is a highly competitive process and award. For this year's award, Yale received 305 nominations representing 38 different states from around the nation and 17 countries. And through this process, Mr. Santa Cruz was distinguished as one of only 50 teachers and 21 counselors selected for this prestigious award. So we want to share this great news with the community. Another example of an outstanding educator touching the lives of students far beyond the walls of Pueblo, and students that are now matriculating in to one of the most prestigious universities in the nation. A moment of sadness this evening for a long-time champion for public education, not just in the Tucson Unified School District, but throughout Pima County, throughout the city of Tucson. The Tucson Unified School District Administration, on behalf of all of our employees, we offer our deepest condolences and our memories, our thoughts, and our best wishes for the family of Brenda Even, former TUSD governing board member, who served the Tucson Unified community from 1991 through 1998, and then went on to serve the Pima Community College School Board from 2001 through 2014. In my research and learning about Mrs. Even's legacy to the district, I was inspired to learn that she was one of the earliest champions for family and community engagement, one of the earliest champions for the concept of family and community engagement centers, which we now sit and reside in for these meetings here at Duffy, which we now proudly have over at Palo Verde and Wakefield and the Southwest Center. And she championed equity in family and community engagement and prioritizing resources for the underserved long before those issues were at the forefront of the national discourse around new educational priorities for the 21st century. So please join me in offering a moment of silence for longtime governing board member Brenda Even, who served us 1991 to 1998. Thank you. And lastly, to conclude this superintendent's report, one of the things I enjoy most about returning to in-person learning is visiting the schools, and I started my ambitious yearly campaign to visit all 89 campuses. And I want to thank Principal Frank Rostenhauser for an amazing visit at Pueblo, Principal Dora Salamondo for a wonderful visit out at Wheeler, and Principal Martin Muick for an outstanding visit out at McGee Middle School over the last 10 days. And I want to personally thank Miss Elaine Straub. Thank you so much, Pueblo science teacher, for welcoming me into your classroom earlier this week. I thoroughly enjoyed the amazing student engagement I saw with the dissection project. The students of Miss Straub's class were in the middle of a dissection project, fully engaged in the scientific process. I enjoyed watching them make observations, record data, make inferences. Unfortunately, they were dissecting rats, but it was a tremendous opportunity for me to see a return to student engagement. So Thank you, Ms. Straub, for welcoming me into your classroom. And I also want to thank Sarah Subatic, a first-year teacher to Pueblo and to the district. Thank you also for welcoming me into your environmental science classroom. It was absolutely outstanding to see the high levels of student engagement. So I look forward to visiting more classrooms throughout the year. President Grijalva, members of the governing board, that concludes my report.
Thank you so much, Dr. Trujillo, and thank you for acknowledging Brenda Even and her contributions to this district. I did not have the pleasure of working with her. She was actually on the board when I was in TUSD. Myself and Miss Luna Rose were just talking about that. Like, I remember seeing her name on buildings. And what I do know of her, because I worked with a PIMA Prevention Partnership when she was on the governing board there and the advisory board there, is that she really did not take no for an answer. It was like, okay, I hear what you're saying, so let's come up with another solution. So she's very tenacious, determined, very smart, and I know many people that are really missing her and sending their condolences to the family. And also Miss Subatek at Pueblo is my daughter's teacher, so yes, she's very impressive. Thank you for visiting. Okay, so now we are on to call to the audience. Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva, excuse me. Public participation at board meetings. During the audience call, the board clerk will recognize speakers and maintain order by setting appropriate limitations. The governing board is committed to the safety of the entire TUSD community in order to observe the recommended safeguards for reducing the rate of spread of COVID-19. The following procedures related to the call to the audience portion of board meetings will be observed. All public comments for the meeting were accepted in written form. Public comments will be read into the record by the program coordinator of staff services to the governing board. Individuals addressing the board should observe rules of propriety and good conduct and refrain from impertinent or slanderous remarks. TUSD serves students from all ages, so speakers should be aware that children may be present or listening. Our staff will make sure each board member receives a copy, and at the conclusion of the call to the audience, the governing board president will ask if individual board members wish to respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the board, wish to ask staff to review a matter, or wish to ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. By law, at most, 2 board members can address any single issue raised during the call to the audience, and contents of this card are public information. And our first letter is from Rhonda Hart.
The mask off of our children now. Over the weekend, there were sports games televised with packed stadiums, some indoor with thousands of people attending. No mask, yet our children have to wear masks in classrooms with the average size of 30. Take the mask off our children now. I am demanding that the mask mandate in the Tucson Unified District be immediately lifted. Cloth masks do not work, studies show. Paper masks say right on the box that they do not work. Get educated and take the mask off of all of our children now. Rhonda Hart.
And Claire Robinson.
Dear members of the TUSD Governing Board, I understand that the Governing Board will be reviewing the status and progress of TUSD's ongoing COVID-19 mitigation efforts and COVID-19 related impacts on our schools during the September 9, 2021 meeting. As a parent, I support TUSD's efforts to implement and enforce safety requirements for COVID-19. Like many, my family has spent the greater part of 2020 and 2021 keeping ourselves and loved ones safe. We are thankful TUSD schools are open because we know children learn more in school and parents need to return to work. But as September 28th approaches, we are increasingly concerned that our efforts to mask, socially distance, and vaccinate when eligible may be upended by staff, administrators, and teachers who will choose not to mask and or seek vaccination for COVID-19, particularly in K-5 schools. Masks diminish the spread of infectious diseases such as COVID-19. Masking indoors is a simple way to save lives and protect children from harm while they are at school. In many ways, schools act in place of parents. Moreover, teachers, staff, and administrators serve role models. Schools are arguably the center of social and emotional learning. What happens on campuses and in classrooms matters to parents, especially when activities concern the safety and well-being of their children and concern how children learn to act in the interest of others. Know that my family strongly supports in-person learning and the measures needed to protect the health and safety of children, even when we must give up a few personal freedoms to do so. TUB is indeed an option, but online learning is not viable for the parents who need to work and cannot afford childcare. Plus, TUB is not the same as in-person instruction. We want our children and all children in this district to be safe and healthy in school, to reach adulthood, and to have learned how individuals can work together as a community to solve problems. Requiring masks indoors during instruction can not only protect children from harm, but also teach them to look after others. Respectfully submitted, Claire Robinson, second grader, parent, and educator.
Is G. Kapuscinski.
Dual pathway programs, ACS and virtual date, was rushed through, poorly planned, and narrowly considered. On August 10th and 24th, and in today's agenda item 8.1, the governing board was given false information regarding DATE enrollment, presumably to justify using DATE teachers for ACS. Remote learning is an emergency mitigation for a public health crisis and should not be used to mitigate budget deficiencies at the expense of students' educational rights. Virtual date violates IDA protections for ex-ed students who must not be long-term suspended at home. Virtual date ignores the student code of conduct, which offers date as an alternative to OSS suspension at home. Virtual date defies the USP, which expects date to be a mitigation of exclusionary discipline at home. Virtual date violates ADE's ADM requirements for daily instructional minutes. The district receives full ADM funding for each suspended student while offering less than half the required time in instructional services. The use of a lone monitor at an FRC is to supervise a group of students with significant behavior issues, including physical aggression and drug use, is highly unsafe and unviable. ACS violates ARS 15-346 and GBP-JHD. Absent students are supposed to receive the actual coursework from their regular teachers. ACS assigns extra assignments to quarantine students. There is no process in place to clearly explain this to parents. ACS posts general lessons in only 3 to 4 of the students' 7 classes. There is no process in place for students to receive the coursework for the other 3 to 4 classes. Although there is no process in place for students to earn credit in their regular classes for completed ACS work, parents are led to believe otherwise. Clever, a district-wide platform already in place, would be the best vehicle to provide a continuation of content and coursework to quarantine students. Clever is user-friendly and easily navigated by teachers, students, and parents. Jean Kapuscinski.
Jared Bladston.
Is it true that TUSD has received more than $172 million from federal COVID money, and that if you give up on your fascist mask mandate, that you stand to lose future federal dollars? We can see through your greed and realize you care nothing about our kids. If you did, you would take the time to read at least one of the more than 100 peer-reviewed scientific publications proving that mask wearing is harmful to human health, especially kids. You can find a list of those articles by searching PMC 8072811. What you people are doing is wrong and needs to be stopped. Jern Blackstone.
Next is Beth Putnam Hidalgo.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Trujillo. I am Beth Putnam Hidalgo. I have long followed the district's efforts to integrate and give all students equal opportunities to learn. In that light, I cannot understand why DATE is being dismantled. Its success has been proven through evaluations since it began in 2015. Student school participation increased along with academic scores, while behavioral problems decreased. The keys to this success were dedicated and highly qualified teachers, small class sizes, individualized attention, and wraparound services. DATE students are disproportionately Black, Latino, Native American, and ex-ed students. As students under suspension, they are particularly vulnerable to the school-to-prison pipeline. Why, when most students are returning to in-school learning, are DATE students being turned away into virtual learning? Why are the very things that work to measurably help them, the proximity of the teachers and services and the individualized instructional care they need, being removed? How can such dismantling even be legal or ethical since DAPE is part of the Unitary Status Plan? How can there be a court filing that refers to DAPE as a USP program that allows continuation of students' education in a classroom setting on the very same day that the board hears of its dismantling? Are we really so far away from court oversight that districts can thumb its nose at the very idea of educational equity for these extremely vulnerable students? Why is dismantling the successful program linked to offering services to students quarantined due to COVID? The quarantined kids need virtual instruction. Their 10-day quarantine will affect parental schedules, work hours, etc. Why does this mean that A, DAPE teachers have to do double duty, and B, DAPE students have to suffer the same household dislocations only for between 20 and 45 days and lose the very services that caused the program to be successful? This plan is poorly thought out and does a disservice to both groups of students. Board members, why are you allowing this to happen? Why does the superintendent get to just tell you what he is doing without your consent, without the consultation of the teachers in the program or prior information to the plaintiffs or the Department of Justice? Where is your own research on this issue? What do claims of low enrollment mean at the very beginning of the school year? What do they mean during a pandemic year? The district says there are no cases in the disciplinary pipeline, but it seems that there are. By dismantling the DAPE program, you may well be offering transportation to the school to prison pipeline. Please stop this process immediately. The students in DAPE deserve every bit as a great success as your own children. Do not be complicit in treating these students as if they were expendable. There is a request for response to all questions and action to hear these matters. Thank you.
Next is Judy Bevier.
Dear TUSD board members, the district has stated that they are telling us to wear a mask as a condition of employment and or getting a free and appropriate public education while on TUSD property. We will wear the mask until the law is clarified in good faith. As a TUSD district representative and board member, you agree to accepting liability on behalf of TUSD if any people are harmed while wearing a mask, while performing job duties or obtaining a free and appropriate public education. Sincerely, Judy Bevier.
Dawn Stevenson.
Masks need to be optional. The board has yet to provide studies for the parents to see that prove masks work. TUSD has had a mask mandate since the start of school and has active cases which tells you these are not working. There are other districts without a mask mandate with minimal cases. I know my children, I am responsible for my children, and I know what works best for my children. It is not my responsibility to take care of another child and or adult that choose a poor health lifestyle. That is 100% on them. There are others in poor health that did not bring that upon themselves. Those are the adults and or children that should be teaching from home or learning from home. We are not co-parenting. You have no right to mandate anything on my children. You work for us. We do not work for you. We pay for the schools. We pay for the school faculty salary. We pay for the electric, etc. with our tax dollars. This is tyranny. One of the board members mentioned in one meeting that this isn't tyranny, and she referred to tyranny as what is happening to women and children in Afghanistan. What is happening in Afghanistan is a result of the president making poor choices. Tyranny is cruel, unreasonable, or arbitrary use of power or control, hence what the board members are doing currently. Remove the mask. Thank you, Don Stevenson.
Melissa Convery.
Gabriel, Sadie, Adelita, Robbie, Layla, and Natalie. I am sending this again because you six have a hard time understanding. You are opening yourselves up to lawsuits and legal ramifications. I'm trying to warn you. I have written and rewritten this email multiple times, and each time I decided it was too harsh. Although it needs to be harsh because you are ruining my son's high school experience with your tyrannical decrees. It is heartbreaking that you are doing what you are doing for a virus that is 99.98% survivable depending on your age. It comes down to the public school system is broken. It needs to be completely redone from the inside out. I could give you so many stats and studies that confirm that the ineffectiveness of masks and more studies that confirm their negative health effects. I could cite laws that show what you are doing is illegal, but we all know that wouldn't matter to you six. You have an agenda and will not listen to the majority. Actual science or the law unless you are forced to do so. And where are our advocates? They seem to have disappeared, so you feel empowered. It would be good for you all to remember that God always wins in the end. We the people will mobilize and go about this a different way. Melissa Conroy, mother of 2 children in TUSD.
Daniel Noriega.
First off, I want to say how utterly cowardly this is, forcing the parents, the only voice that our children have, and members of the community to watch this board meeting live from a computer instead of hearing our voices and concerns. I know for a fact other school districts are not doing this to their community and that it is within our own city and other cities and states around the country. This goes to prove my statement even more, so let me begin. Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Noriega, and I am a member of the community and a father of 3. You, the school board, have decided that our children should go to school all day, every day, wearing muzzles like rabid dogs. I have listened to your arguments, and I have noticed that they are missing a few things, namely evidence, data, science, common sense, and basic human decency. You have presented no facts whatsoever, so let's go ahead and provide you all with some. COVID poses almost no risk to our kids at all. 4.2 million children have tested positive for COVID. A total of 0.008% of them have died. Overall, 0.0004% of the child population in this county has died of COVID. Twice as many have died by drowning each year. A bathtub poses more risk to a child than COVID does. Our children are far more likely to die in the car on the way to school than from getting COVID at school. What about the flu? The CDC estimated that 480 kids died from the flu during the 2018-2019 season. That is more than those who have died from COVID in a year and a half. Now, during the 2018-2019 flu season, I would like to know if anybody on the school board suggested that at any point that year that our children should wear masks. I would like to know if any parent or community member suggested that at any point that year our children or people in general should wear masks for the flu, which again is more dangerous than COVID. That's a fact. Now, do you know what it is called when you force your children to wear masks from fear of a virus that almost poses no threat to them? It's called child abuse. Want to look up a disease? Look up Munchausen by proxy, because that is what this is. If you think I'm exaggerating, then how would you respond to a parent who forces their kid to wear a football helmet all day, every day, from the fear of coconuts and meteors falling from the sky? Kids are almost as likely to die from COVID as they are from a rock in the sky. But if you saw that, you would say to the parent that they are abusive. They are forcing their children to participate in this utterly insane charade in order to satisfy their delusional, psychotic hypochondria. Now, do any of you know what sort of psychological damage we do to the children by forcing them to cover up their faces? We are teaching them that the air is toxic, that everyone around them is sick, depriving them of the ability to see each other's faces. Do you know what kind of damage that does? Have you even thought about that?
Excuse me, Ms. Peña. The 3 minutes are up for the comment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next is Norma Centurami.
Dear TUSD Board, I am writing this letter to raise concern about the recent changes made to the pay structure and classification between a regular teacher assistant and an exception ed teacher assistant. In addition, I would like to inform you that I am not satisfied with the pay discrepancy between these 2 titles, particularly where I fall within the classification. Many changes have been made recently as it relates to the role of a teacher assistant. For example, we are currently serving children ages 3 to 4 years old, some of which are not potty trained, so we have to change some students' diapers. Sometimes we have children who are, at the time of enrollment, they only present signs of speech delay, IEP, but once they are in the program, you notice that they have developmental delays. early signs of autism spectrum disorder, and so forth. Yet we continue to serve these children to the best of our abilities because they are already enrolled in the program. When it comes down to it, we are providing the same duties as an exception ed teacher assistant, which consists of toileting, diapering, and assisting with the development delays. Furthermore, my duties as a teacher assistant have changed from fostering a growth in every childhood learning. I believe I'm an essential part of the classroom and devote myself to making a difference for these children, especially as for many in our program, English is not their first language. But I do not feel that I am being properly classified. I have been with TUSD for 18 years and don't even make more than $15 an hour. You would think with my years of service, commitment to my community, and dedication to help low-income students, I would be making more than a starting drive-through employee at In-N-Out, but this is not the case. I currently make $13 an hour and do not feel like my pay reflects my years of experience, additional trainings, and skill level. I urge the board to reconsider and amend the current pay structure and classification scale as it does not reflect its commitment to public engagement and equality among its educators and support staff. Please consider my request to amend not only my current pay classification, but those of my peers. Sincerely, Norma Centorami, Teacher Assistant, Myers Ganon.
Grace Kinney.
Dear TUSD Board, this letter is to let you know that I am not satisfied with the pay structure and classification study that I fell under. After 18 years with the TUSD district, you would think I was making more money than a starting barista at Starbucks. I don't quite make the $15 an hour they do. I am stuck at $13.80, the pay I made in the 1990s as a supervisor at Teleservices. I work daily with students, assist the teachers with all their duties, and am an essential part of the classroom. If I am absent, I have to request a substitute to assist the teacher. I would like to see my teacher assistant position change from regular teacher assistant to exceptional education teacher assistant, as our classroom continues to enroll children with IEPs that require assistance with toileting, diapering, and assistance with developmental delays. And the fact that we are all classified inclusive classrooms. Our duties have changed to that of an exceptional education teacher assistant. I perform the same duties and have 18 years of experience. Some of my duties include toileting and diapering, intercepting children from their buses in the morning and putting them back on the bus after school. I also assist them with such things as keeping up with the class as we walk down the hall, climbing up the steps to the jungle gym, then helping them come back down, washing hands, helping them opening items in their breakfast and lunches, cleaning up after them, etc. This is besides working one-on-one with the children and in a small group. I am sure I put all that and more down on the survey we filled out last year. Please consider my request to be an exceptional teacher assistant. I believe my pay should reflect the 18 years of experience and skill level. Sincerely, Ms. Grace Kinney, Teacher Assistant at Steele Elementary School Preschool Program.
Next is Jennifer Sprung.
Dear Governing Board members, Chair Grijalva, Superintendent Trujillo, Legal Counsel, TUSD Board policies dictate reporting of issues, protections of individuals from reprisals, and timely actions by TUSD to correct reported issues. And it is the right of taxpayers, community members, parents, and employees to bring forth concerns and violations of administration to the administration. Herein lies the problem. 1, the failure to respond, refute, answer, or address issues is a failure in organizational accountability, legal responsibility, transparency, and professional ethics for the district. 2, there appears discrimination in practice. 3, failure to act equates to injustice and permits inequitable treatment within and by TUSD. Governed by state statutes and board policies, it is the responsibility of the district administration on behalf of the board to respond, to hear, to investigate, and to take actions to correct all reported incidents. Documented and reported incidents include prohibited personnel practices, abuses of authority, reprisals, eavesdropping, harassment, and evidence of probable criminal acts. Continued inaction is is a detriment to the community at large and to the district. As an example, the new draft policy on fraud is perhaps a futile and hollow gesture of governance when other existing policies are neither utilized nor enforced. Why is the value of a policy an agreement or laws if not administered? Respectfully, this services as a demand for response, hearing, and actions on appropriately filed whistleblower complaints, reinstatement of district canceled meetings to hear filed grievances, and a reply to prior call to the audience questions entered in record on 8/24/2021 regarding ARS 38-532 through 534. Thank you. Respectfully submitted, Jennifer Sprung, TUSD employee since 1987.
Is this Amy Soniera?
We, the parents, are still wondering why you, the governing board and superintendent, are still not following the science that the risk of COVID-19 in children is so low that any imagined benefits of masks cannot possibly outweigh the risk. Based on CDC data, the COVID survival rate of children between the ages of 0 and 14 years of age is 99.9998%. School and daycare transmission studies show that transmission of COVID-19 among unmasked children is remarkably low. If children don't really spread COVID, but you put masks on them, they still won't spread COVID. But masks will look like they work, at least to those who believe in that falsity, including all of you. In fact, forcing masks upon our children actually weakens their immune system. Exposure to germs helps build their immune system, and by making masks our kids, you are not allowing them to build their immunities. You are also causing them to live in fear of a virus that once again they have a 99.9998% chance of surviving. You are making them believe that a piece of cloth over their face is their savior and will protect them and others when we all know virus particles travel right through it. It's ridiculous and makes no sense. Can you make it make sense? Plus, you keep saying it's the majority of students can get vaccinated. So we should get our kids the shot that doesn't stop people from contracting or spreading it. That doesn't make sense either. Speaking to other parents right now, we are not trying to take the mask off of your kids' faces if you choose to believe that a piece of cloth or thin material protects them. That is your choice as a parent to do what you feel is best for your child. We should have the same freedom of choice to not mask our kids. Amy Soniera.
Next is Emmy Zapata with Kids Collective.
To the governing board, we know we have 2 minutes, so please read quickly. We are a direct action collective of Tucson youth. We care about our community and about our education. We also care deeply about the fact that we don't have a say in the decisions being made for us about our learning. We are the ones spending over 13 years in these schools, but we have no input in the policy. Childism is rampant in these policies. We have autonomy and want it respected. We don't want nor need police on our campuses. It creates intimidation and funnels more of us through the school to prison pipeline. It is proven schools are not safer with cops. Use the $64,000 that you want to throw at TPD and PCSD to be prom police and put it to free period products or literally anything else. They're not even required. And you say yourselves it's because they intimidate us. No military recruiters on campus. Figure out a way to opt out of NCLB, and please divest JROTC from the JTED programs. JROTC rifle team at Cholla, seriously? We are students, not soldiers. Get rid of it. While we're at it, we are done being indoctrinated. We demand you make the Pledge of Allegiance opt in rather than opt out. We've been reciting it since PK without knowing what it means. This is a big and immediate one, so please pay attention. Stop giving online homework, and until the district provides all devices and hotspots, it is unequitable. We want free period products in all school restrooms. No more walk of shame to the nurse's office. Install free dispensers in all restrooms regardless of gender. Stop standardized testing. It's a cash grab for test and textbook companies. And teach us real history. Stop banning CRT. We know our ancestors. Tell us about them. Queer people exist, get over it. Comprehensive sex ed is our right. Our parents don't own us, so we don't need their permission to learn it. Bodily autonomy, Google it. And get rid of the outdated sexist dress code that targets female identifying students. Our shoulders are not a distraction. We are entitled to decisions about our education and lives. Listen to us. Thank you, Emmy Zapata, the oldest ACA collective member.
And last is Lizette Lazo Arbayo.
Good afternoon, TUSD board members and parents. My public comment today is to inquire about TUSD's SR3 funding. I see TUSD will be receiving a total of $172,925,217.32 for implementing a health and safety plan for returning to school to be updated every 6 months. I did see the plan must include safety recommendations established by the CDC. Universal and correct wearing a mask, modifying facilities to allow for physical distancing, example, use of cohort spotting, hand washing and respiratory etiquette, cleaning and maintaining healthy facilities, including improving ventilation, contact tracing in combination with isolation and quarantine in collaboration with the state, local, territorial, or tribal health departments, diagnostic and screening testing, efforts to provide vaccinations to school communities, appropriate accommodations for children and disabilities with respect to health and safety policies, coordination with state and local health officials, how it will ensure continuity of services, including but not limited to services to address students' academic needs and students and staff social, emotional, mental health, and other needs, which may include student health and food services. With the amount of money that is to be received for this implementation of rules and regulations, which are not feasible to many parents, especially for special needs children, I'd like to know if TUSD is able to hire an industrial hygienist, which is an expert who is defined as one who practices the science devoted to the anticipation, recognition, evaluation, and control of those environmental factors or stressors arising in or from the workplace, which may cause sickness, impaired health and well-being, or significant discomfort among workers or among the citizens of the community. Can TUSD hire an accredited environmental hygienist, evaluate all of TUSD facilities to make adjustments for proper exposure controls in all buildings to help mitigate the spread of not only COVID-19, but other airborne diseases that affect children? An environmental hygienist can make proper recommendations for installation of proper HVAC systems that can kill virus, mold, and bacteria. HVAC systems such as an intake fans and air duct purification systems, ultraviolet UVC lighting streams, and high efficacy filtration systems. Enclosed, you will find a PowerPoint presentation by accredited industrial hygienist Stephen Petty. I have also emailed out this PowerPoint individually to each one of the board members for reference and study. We now must learn to live with this virus, and there are systems proven to work which would eliminate the usage of masks in schools. Regards, Lisette Arbayo.
Thank you. And that was the last letter, Ms. Grijalva.
Okay, thank you, Clerk Shaw. Now we are moving on to the, board members, any comment or response? Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, President Grijalva. I wanted to address the pay issues with the teacher and assistants. I think, and I hope I speak for the entire TUSD governing board, that we agree that $13.50 or $13.80 an hour is not enough, whether you're a new employee or have 18 years of experience in our district. And the governing board voted unanimously a few months ago to make a $15 minimum wage a priority focus area of the Budget Advisory Committee. The Budget Advisory Committee on October 19th will meet to address that and address issues of raising a minimum wage to $15, how to address compression and the cost, and to make that sustainable. So I encourage you to attend on October 19th from 4 to 6 p.m. The Budget Advisory Committee, which will be hopefully making some important recommendations to the governing board on how to do that in a fiscally sustainable way and make sure we increase salaries for everyone in TUSD.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. There are board members?
Yes, Ms.
Ms.
McGraw.
Luna Rose.
Thank you. I just wanted to address the second to last letter, I believe, Their name is Emmy or Emma, and my apologies for perhaps not getting it correct. But I just wanted to say that I really appreciated the letter and hearing the voices of our students, and that we're listening, and we're here to listen and to try to work in mitigating any of your concerns, and that I just want to let you know that I personally stand with you. So thank you for the letter.
Great. Ms. Katz.
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. I was going to share this when we got to the date presentation later on in the meeting, but I'm going to go ahead and cover some of this as well right now in response to Bets Putnam Hidalgo's comment about the school-to-prison pipeline and the reconfiguration of date. So it's been a while since I ran my campaign, so I'd just like to remind the public of my area of expertise in breaking the school-to-prison pipeline. I teach professional development for educators on classroom management, implicit biases, and most importantly, on exclusionary discipline practices and what sort of effect exclusionary discipline practices have on our students. So I'd also like to read the American Psychological Association definition for exclusionary discipline. And that is, exclusionary discipline encompasses any type of school disciplinary action that removes or excludes a student from his or her usual educational setting. So exclusionary discipline practice is really a spectrum. And with what we know now, DAPE would be considered an exclusionary discipline practice. So as we know that exclusionary discipline practices increase the school-to-prison pipeline. And the greatest way to ensure a child will not succeed is to leave our schools with temporary and or unqualified people. In 2017 and in early 2018, when I was elected to the board, we did a huge adjustment to the Student Code of Conduct. And that, along with the school-wide positive behavioral interventions and supports, was the biggest impact we could have had in disrupting the school-to-prison pipeline. The restorative practices, increasing counselors in our schools, those sort of things. So the school-to-prison, so in disrupting the school-to-prison pipeline. So along with a consistent and qualified educators in our schools. So I'll revisit this when we get to the agenda item, but I did want to say that according to the American Psychological Association and all experts in the field, it is on the spectrum of exclusionary discipline. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or response? Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. I would like us to review the request by Norma Centurami, and Grace Kinney to increase their pay, and any TA who has added duty, making them an ex-ed TA or teacher. I think we should really look into that now and not wait for a couple years when we finally decide to increase our minimum wage. Thank you. Also, I would like us to add the ideas by Emmy Zapata and their collective to a future agenda. Let's see. And also, I would like us to look into Ms. Lazo Arbayo's proposal to have an industrial environmental hygienist look into each of our school campuses. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to quickly respond to the a few of the comments regarding removing masks. You know, TUSD is responsible morally, ethically, and legally to ensure the safety of all of our students and staff while in our schools. I will continue to support and advocate for required mask use in TUSD schools and facilities. Putting a face covering is the bare minimum that we can do to protect our community until the majority of our students are vaccinated. And after living almost a year of entirely online schooling, we're doing everything we can to keep our classrooms and schools open. Okay.
Ms.
So,
Grijalva?
yes.
Quickly, I'm sorry.
Ms. Pinrose,
I
go
just wanted to let the public know that My camera is not working on the laptop, so I am here with my colleagues, but it is unavailable, so
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. So now we are on to, right after call to the audience with agenda adjustments 6.2, which is a request for renaming the Choya High School softball field in honor of Mr. Ralph Romero.
Yes, it is my pleasure to welcome Choya's principal, longtime serving principal, Mr. Frank Armenta, here tonight to make a request that we memorialize who the Choya community knows as Mr. Choya, who proudly served the Choya community from 1984 all the way through 2013. And tonight, the Choya community has a proposal that would see them memorializing the softball field in his honor. So take it away, Mr. Armenta. And also with us is Masai Dean, who's the athletic coordinator also for Choya High School, and of course, our regional assistant superintendent who works with Choya and supports the Choya community, Mr. Lambert. Mr. Armenta.
Good evening, governing board members, President Grijalva, Board Clerk Shaw, Dr. Trio, and staff. I am proud to present to you the following recommendation for renaming the Choya High School varsity softball field in honor of Ralph Romero, better known as Mr. Choya. I want to thank Assistant Principal Tariq Rasul, Athletic Director Masai Dean, and the former and present softball players and coaches, and especially his daughter Bernadette Romero, and their grandson Julian, who have been patiently waiting for this renaming and recommendation. I do want to let Masai Dean give you a little biography of Ralph, as well as Mr. Rasul, who has worked alongside of Ralph. So, Dean, are you ready there, Mr. Dean?
I am. Good afternoon, board members. A little biography about Mr. Romero is, Mr. Ralph Romero has served our community for over 20 years. He's helped out he was coaching and helped out in the capacity of softball and football during that time. And he's been the consummate Choya Charger for us. There's spans of student athletes that are adults now who speak highly and rave of Ralph, as well as other administrators and coaches throughout the district and other districts. And I'm myself personally just feel really proud to be on this committee and have an opportunity to do this for Ralph. I've known Ralph since I've been at Choya, which is almost 15 years, and he's been a godsend in the help he's done and how he's worked with our students. Thank you.
Mr. Russell?
Yes, good evening, board members. Thank you so much, Choya community and the Tucson Unified School District community. Worked with Mr. Romero for over 20 years, and Coach Romero, he also served the legendary Ed Brown for those times too, and he was a custodian for over 20-something years. And I'm talking about the custodian as the keeper of the house. He took care of soccer fields for us, not just the softball and baseball. But I think it's a good opportunity that the board is providing his family and the Choya family for. Go Chargers.
Thank you, Mr. Russell, and thank you, Mr. Dean. I just want to, give just kind of some hallmarks of Ralph, or as I like to call him when I came on, Ralphie. Ralph would start off at the morning at 6 o'clock on our campus, and if it was game day on Thursday or game day on Friday, he would stay until all the lights were off, 10:30, 11. He was also our equipment manager, and even in the cold days of soccer, Ralph, right, we would have your little heater there, and even our boys soccer have taken him on his wing. Presently, he's going through some cancer treatment, and we just love him. As you all know, we don't want to acknowledge people while they're gone. We want to acknowledge them while they're here, and I do believe it is fitting that Mr. Charger and Mr. Choya be acknowledged, and we get that softball field changed over to his name while he's present with us. Ralphie, do you have anything to say? Go ahead and unmute there, Ralphie. He's getting there. Bernadette, did you get it? Go ahead. We're good.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Armenta. I just want to thank the board and all the administrators and all the kids, all the coaches. I really appreciate this. I love you very much.
Well, thank you very much. Dr. Trujillo, did you have a recommendation?
We proudly support the recommendation of the Cholla leadership and the Cholla community to rename the softball facility in honor of Coach Romero, Mr. Cholla. And I personally want to thank you, Coach Romero, for dedicating your life to the young people of the Cholla community and the Tucson Unified School District. It's an inspiration.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I'd like to move the item.
I'll second.
Thank you. So I move the item and Ms. Luna Rose seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item passes unanimously. On behalf of the TUSD Governing Board, Mr. Romero, thank you so much for your service. I hope that this boosts your energy and helps you to keep fighting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, board members. Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Thank you, Mr. Lambert, and Darlene Matus in the office there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armenta, and to the Cholla community for bringing this to the board. We're very happy to support it. Muchas gracias. Okay. Now we are moving on to 6.3, and that is request of the renaming of the Cholla High School South Gymnasium in honor of Mr. Michael Argraves. Mr. Armenta, you have a lot. We're celebrating Cholla a lot this evening. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, I'd like to turn it back over to Mr. Armenta to honor another iconic coaching presence coming out of the Cholla community, who rendered over 33 years of service to the young people of the Cholla community and recently passed away a few years ago. And we would like to consider honoring his memory tonight in reviewing the recommendation of Cholla for the renaming of the South Gymnasium. Mr. Armenta.
Again, good evening, Governing Board, President Grijalva, Board Clerk Shaw, board members, Dr. Trujillo, and support staff. Again, I am very proud to present the following recommendation for the renaming of the Cholla South Gym in honor of the late Michael Argraves. He has contributed to the many lives of our students and families of the Cholla community. He was a dedicated basketball coach, well known, and also a softball coach, and also a mentor and sometimes father figure to a lot of our girls on our teams. When his tragic death happened, a young lady named Tiffany and Dr. Janelle Hunter, who presently works with us on our campus, came to me and said this has to happen. And I do want to let them know I apologize for the delay, but our pandemic came in and there was a delay, but Tiffany did not give up. She continued to push Mr. Rasul and Mr. Dean to get this done. And it is great. It's with great honor that I ask that you visit this item on your agenda today. Mr. Argraves also worked in the special ed field. So he worked with those students in PE. I had the most amazing patience for those students as well as our students at Cholla High School. I had an opportunity to speak to Justin. I don't know if he's on here, Argraves, and I just want to let him know that his mentor and dad have really pushed him to be a great coach, football coach, and I'm just amazed at the work that Justin Argraves has done, and we can see that he has that same fight as his father did in love and passion for young people. Justin, again, I want to let you and your family know that we tried as hard as we could to get this earlier, but I appreciate your patience and your family's patience. And all I can say is that I hope that, we move forward with this item and it gets passed. And I want to thank you and your family, and also a special shout out and love for, Ruth, who's your aunt, who worked with me at Santa Rita, and we lost her as well. But I just want to let you know that hopefully this will make up a little bit, and we can get that there, sir. So, Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, it's my pleasure and my honor to fully support this recommendation, members of the governing board, to honor this incredible coaching icon coming out of the Cholla community and to memorialize his legacy to the young people that he served and impacted and the lives that he changed. And we would proudly welcome the name Hargraves to memorialize that service out there at Cholla. So that's our recommendation. We support it.
Thank you. I would like to move the item.
I'll second.
And Ms. Monroe seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Coach Hargrave coached for 32 years in Tucson, so his legacy is significant and long, and it's our pleasure to be able to honor Coach Hargraves. And I see his son Justin, also Coach Hargraves, is on the line. Did you want to add anything, sir?
I just want to say thank you on behalf of my family and my dad, Mike. He lived and breathed Cholla High School for 30 plus years, so this is a tremendous honor. And I know he'd especially be happy kind of going in at the same time with Ralph, getting the softball field named after Ralph. He was tremendous friends with Ralph. So Ralph, if you're still there, man, congratulations to you. Love you. Hope all is well, man. Hang in there, bud. So thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armenta and the Cholla community for bringing this forward. Now we're on to item 7.3, Tucson Unified School District COVID-19 Readiness and Response District Update, August 24th through September 9th. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, I'd like to welcome our team. This is our reoccurring COVID-19 Readiness and Response Update. But I just want to lead with the item with some pending governing board information requests. We have now been able to compile the information that now will allow us to successfully track the amount of students that have been assigned the academic continuation services as a result of COVID protocols, as well as on a daily basis, any amount of classroom closures that may be recommended. So just a couple of notes as we begin. Total classroom closures as of this day or currently active or recommended for the day of September 9th, we have 2. And both of those classes are over there at Maldonado. Since the opening of the school year, August 5th, we've experienced a total of 10 classroom closures over at Soling Tom, Bonias, Roberts Naylor, Howell, Hughes, White, Covet Elementary, Steele, and Maldonado and Hollinger, respectively. The total number of district outbreaks since the opening of school have been 4. The Saguaro football team and the Tucson High football team, Santa Rita volleyball, and 1 classroom at Dunham. As of September 7th, we've had a total of 49 students recommended for academic continuation services, meaning remote instruction, as a result of adherence to COVID protocols, either through isolation or through quarantine, as a result of case positivity. And as of this day, we have totally active right now, meaning engaged and attending academic continuation services as a result of these protocols. We have 15 current as of these dates. Governing board members, you'll note that we've made these adjustments in your daily reports now, so you'll be able to track on a daily basis classroom closures as well as academic continuation service numbers. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our Regional Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Sanchez. Richard Sanchez will lead us off this evening for our recurring update on COVID-19 readiness.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Good evening, Board President Grijalva, governing board members, and Dr. Trujillo. As a part of our mitigation efforts, we are going to be covering a number of items on our agenda. So next slide, please. Those items include we are going to provide the board a Tuba update, in particular around student enrollment and what we project going into our second quarter. We are going to be able to provide some lunchtime school updates, including some photos of various grade levels regarding indoor and outdoor spaces, pool testing, and performance guidance adjustment. So let us begin with the next slide, which is the Tuba update. As a part of just completing our first month of academic instruction, we felt it was very important to provide the board an update on our newest instructional model, remote instructional model, which is Tuba. The timing of this update was important to inform the board of the enrollment data and pending enrollment trends that we are currently seeing as we near the end of first quarter. We're going into our second quarter, which includes our fall and winter months. We also know that we're still dealing with a pandemic, and also the state legislation that is pending come September 29th regarding the mask mandate. So for the board's review, our current enrollment over at Tuba is 2,400 students. As you can see, it's pretty evenly split between K-6 and secondary 7 through 12. We have 1,288 students at K-6 with 1,112 students at the secondary level. We conducted a survey with our current Tuba families to try and get some data regarding enrollment, and in particular regarding enrollment going into the second quarter. As you can see there, the survey data that we have is showing that 78% of our parents and students are going to remain over at Tuba for the second quarter. The entire survey is a separate document that we attached as well for your review. Lastly, we project to have upwards of 200 to 400 students that are going to be in addition to the 2,400 that we currently have come the second quarter. The way that we've been able to determine that projected enrollment is based on a track-it system that we currently have, in which a school site on behalf of the parent can make a request for that student to enter into the remote instructional model. And in tracking that on a daily basis and throughout the next upcoming 4 weeks, we are able to look at that data on a daily basis, thus a weekly basis, and make the determination that we could see an increase between 200 to 400 more students who will be attending this remote instructional model. Next slide. So based on the survey that we conducted, we felt it was really important for second quarter and actually beyond to really get some data back from our parents about the experience over at Tuba and how they truly felt about it beyond just this first month of school. And just some things to note, there are 3 questions that we really wanted to highlight to the board, which we felt were extremely relevant for our projected enrollment. The first one is basically the first question that you see to the left there is, will your student continue at Tuba for second quarter? As you can see, 76% of our parents are saying yes, with 5% saying no, which we would assume at that point that they are returning to in-person learning, with 17% still undecided. So I think over the next 4 weeks, certainly that data will be coming in for us to determine what that 17% will look like. Another question that came up, I believe it was question 4 on the survey, was where was the child last year as far as enrollment goes? We really want to see where our stakeholder groups are coming from, whether they're coming from within TUSD or outside of TUSD. As you can see there, 84% of our families were within TUSD last year, but I will say in a very proud way that we were able to garner 16% of our families came from outside of the TUSD last year. And that really does tell us that we are gaining enrollment through our remote instructional model, whether these are families that were previous TUSD families who left us and now are coming back, or from our neighboring districts who really want to take part in this instructional model. And so when we break down the enrollment, you can see that there are 442 students who are brand new to our district as compared to last year who are participating in the Tuba instructional model. Lastly, there was a question that we talked about that really dealt with trying to determine how parents felt about the remote instructional opportunity that we are affording them. And so this question talks about basically assuming that if COVID concerns were to decline to an insignificant or minimal level, would they continue to keep their child in a remote instructional environment? As you can see through that survey, 53% of them said yes. 37% said that they would return back to in-person, and 10% stated that they did not pick Tuba because of a COVID-related issue. And so when you take the data of the 53% and the 10%, that equates to 63% of our families who really want an opportunity to have in a remote instructional model long-term. So this really helps us as a district and as a Tuba staff to really begin to plan beyond not only second quarter or second semester, but beyond to next year, knowing that this remote instructional model is something that families and students really want to have the opportunity to continue to participate in. Next slide. So one of the unique features of Tuba compared to our neighboring districts is that we are able to provide and facilitate instruction in real time. So that synchronous learning in which every student has a teacher on screen that is providing that instruction. That is very unique. A lot of our neighboring districts do remote instruction, but they are asynchronous. And so it's more of a self-paced kind of model where Tuba is not. And so in order to really continue to have this feature for our students and be able to take advantage of this educational opportunity, it's really important that we stay ahead of the enrollment that comes our way. And so as you can see here, in order to continue to provide that service, we need to continue to have the teachers in the classrooms. And so at this point in time, for our 2,400 students, we calculate needing 88 teachers in order to service those students in that synchronous model. We have been working extremely hard from the onset of the board approval back in June to hire our teachers, and we've been fairly successful in hiring 69 teachers, especially during the summer months and into August, to make sure that we are continuing to serve these students. Thus, we still have some vacancies that we are trying to fill, and we are being extremely active in trying to fill those vacancies. We have 19 openings currently. 14 of them are in elementary, with 5 of them in secondary. But I do want to note that every class is, at this point in time, is being covered. We are either using long-term subs that we've been able to acquire, daily subs, and we've been able to utilize some existing staff within our curriculum and instruction department to come in and basically take over these classes for the first quarter. Our goal is to basically replace every single vacancy that we have with a certified teacher. Next slide. So in order to attract teachers, we are doing the following recruitment pieces that will really help us keep the feature of that asynchronous alive. So continuing to do ongoing hiring fairs. We are doing weekly hiring for our Tuba teachers. The next one is a hard-to-fill stipend. And this is not uncommon to stipends that we've done in the past, recruitment stipends in X-Ed or in our math. This would allow us to attract teachers to do the remote instruction. We are subjected through our consensus agreement not to take our own teachers within our own district after July 1. And we really want to honor not doing that because we know in doing that, that would create a vacancy at the brick and mortar site. So in order to currently attract teachers, especially in the month of September, it's important that we are able to have this kind of stipend available. And we really hope the board will support that. So that way we can continue to fill the vacancies and provide that direct service model to our students. We are also meeting with a contracted vendors that provide certificated teaching services, which means that we would be allowed, if through this contract, be able to hire contracted teachers, and they would be able to come in and provide that synchronous learning. They would basically be able to come in and adopt, of course, our bell schedule, our curriculum, and continue to teach that and facilitate that remote instruction. And then lastly, as we know that with class sizes becoming larger and larger, we want to be able to continue to provide support to our teachers that are currently there. And we are looking at a model in which we could hire some teacher aides, which could come in the remote instruction and help support teachers through helping facilitate breakout rooms and just assisting the teacher with any of the instruction needs that they have. Next slide, please. So as stated in the previous slide, it's important that we continue to provide this unique feature of synchronous learning and teaching. And so I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Flori Hewitt, who's going to walk you through this particular slide.
Thank you,
Yes,
Mr. Sanchez. Good evening, governing board members.
If I could jump in here real quick, just logistically before Mrs. Hewitt begins, for time purposes, once we get through Mrs. Hewitt's portion, that will cap the staff portion, and we'll throw it over to governing board questions, and then we will make our requests. This is a study action item, but I want to make sure that we're honoring the time limit here. So I will turn it back over to Mrs. Hewitt, and then we will go directly to governing board questions, and then into our request for action. Mrs. Hewitt.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Good evening, board members. Very quickly, we have engaged with a contracted vendor that we currently work with who provides excess services when we have gaps in our teaching staff in our current district, specifically for exceptional education. So we have just contacted them and talking about contracting 19 teachers, and our rationale would be so that they could provide synchronous instruction as indicated for Mr. Sanchez. They have given us a preliminary quote of about $200,000 to cover us through the end of this first quarter for the 19 teachers that are needed. This is just based on our current enrollment, as was indicated previously. These teachers are Arizona certified, and I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware of that. And I think that is it. Next slide.
Okay. Board members, did you want to add anything else, Dr. Trujillo?
Yes, so we have two big asks tonight as the governing board heads into the question and answer period. Number one is the utilization of stipends to recruit for this hard to fill assignment. Stipends are what we utilize currently with exceptional education and math, same amount. And we are severely restricted in terms of the usage of currently serving in-person teachers. I want to address any concerns our governing board members may have that offering the stipend could entice a teacher that's currently serving in person in a classroom to take the Tuba assignment. Per the consensus agreement, they have until July 1st to be able to take it outside of the teacher or outside of the classroom assignment. That could become a reality, though, realistically, in the spring hiring season. So I also want to be very honest with you. If the stipend opportunity is alive prior to the July 1st deadline of 2022, we could see that migration and could create those vacancies for the ensuing school year. The second ask is for the immediate contracting of the 19 teachers through Maxim Educational Services. As we get to that topic, I've asked Renee Weatherless to present some cost analyses that will demonstrate the cost of what it would take for us to fund the teachers if they were just regular TUSD employees. If they were just 19 TUSD teachers, what would we pay on a weekly basis and on a daily basis, and then what the difference is when we bring in a Maxim. So with that, I will throw it over to governing board members for question and answer.
Dr. Trujillo, I have a question. And so you're asking for a stipend, but if we're going to work with Maxim, why would we add a stipend? I mean, if they're going to fill the need, I heard Mr. Sanchez talk about how this offer has been extended to subs we have some long-term subs, but not enough to fill the vacancies. We don't have enough teachers. I mean, you've discussed a lot of the issues with ADE and certification and the whole process. So if we're going to use an outside vendor, why are we asking now for the stipend?
The stipend is because the positions are still live, because this is not outsourcing. We're not eliminating the 19 Tuba positions. They're still posted. We're simply using Maxim as a daily coverage option to make sure that there is a teacher serving until we can make a permanent hire. So the stipend is for the attraction of those outside of the district applicants, those externals right now that may want to take this assignment. So it's really meant for that recruitment and retention. My recommendation is really just to keep it active if the governing board approves it, only for this particular school year, just because we saw some data through the survey that would suggest that we're going to be looking at a migration of families back to in-person learning if the COVID situation mitigates itself, and that probably could happen as vaccines become widely available for students 11 and under.
And so the Maxim option is we would just have teachers that are a daily, not a permanent position?
They'd fill it, yeah.
They'd fill it for the period of time.
Until we could make a permanent hire. So like in that situation, if we used a Maxim teacher and we made a hiring recommendation after 3 or 4 weeks for that permanent position, our employee then comes in and replaces the temp. And that's how that works. So our 19 positions are still alive and posted. Maxim is going to carry us until we can make those hiring recommendations.
Well, I just know that it's been an issue with TEA in the past when we do stipends, and so I'm trying to understand the logic. If we don't have enough people in our area, I mean, I'm assuming that HR's called all of our recent retirees, even those that maybe further down the line. I'll just have an issue voting right now for the stipends. I feel more comfortable because it sounds like we've exhausted other options. We want to make sure that we fill the vacancies. So that's sort of where I am. But Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, President Grijalva. Can I have a clarification on the ask? I saw that the stipend is on 7.2 ESSER ask with the amounts and everything. Do you want us to address the stipend in 7.3 here, or do you want us to wait until we get to 7.2 to address the stipend?
Dr. Gravoy-Shaw, that's an excellent point. Logistically, we're technically asking for the board's action later on in the agenda, but because during the ESSER presentation, we're not going to be getting into Maxim and the details of it, we wanted to put it in the COVID item up front, so when you get to the ESSER request, you've already got the details and the backstories. So I appreciate you have that clarification.
Any other
Ms.
questions?
Grijalva?
Yes, Ms. Shah.
Thank you. I absolutely unite with you about the stipend. I think $5,000 is far too much for a contracted teacher that's not even going to be with us for long. Plus, I think the teachers would highly object to such a high stipend. And like you said, if they're already on board to fill those spots, then what's the need for the stipend? I would say that for any subs listening, I would feel a lot better, with a long-term sub in one of these positions who's been in the district for a while than contracting with Maxim. And I do have a question about Tuba and wondering if we have a number of how many exit students are in Tuba at the moment.
Yes, Clerk Shaw, we do have that number. I can pull it up quickly. I know it's over 300 students that are at Tuba.
Over 300?
Correct.
Okay, and how many ex-ed teachers and TAs do we currently have working for Tuba?
I'll defer that to Ms. Hewitt. Do you have that number, Ms. Hewitt?
Yeah, sure. So we have approximately 69 teachers hired. Out of these, for the ex-ed teachers specifically, we have about 10 that we came to the board with, and they're actually contracted through Maxim that are providing the ex-ed services. right now.
Okay, and I know we're going to get into it more in the consent agenda about hiring more, like I said, virtual teachers. But I think it's important to see those numbers since we're going to be increasing, well, potentially increasing.
Absolutely.
Can I ask one more question, Ms.
Yes,
Graham?
of course.
Okay, thank you. Just need a clarifying question about classroom closures. So if a child in a classroom has COVID, at what point does the whole class go into quarantine? Does it have to be a certain number, like 3, to be considered an outbreak to warrant a classroom closure?
Dr. Trujillo?
Yes, I'll turn it over to team.
Hi, this is Leslie. So my understanding for classroom closures, that's determined by Pima County Health Department. We don't decide that. Typically, though, what little I know, and I am not a medical person, but that it has to be at least 2 people that it's transmissible between them that has caused the classroom closure.
2 people, so like if my daughter's in class and the person next to her gets COVID,
and she gives it to your daughter, and because they both sat were not physically distanced, or that for some reason they didn't have a mask or something else, that it could be verified that they can, and that's what Pima County does, then that would cause the question of a classroom closure that Pima County would determine if that's what we should do.
Okay, because I thought we were going to kind of give some of the power back to the school sites, because I've had some parents reach out to me with questions about classroom closures and like a kid in their class getting it, but like the class is still going on. And so it doesn't really make sense to me as to why, like if someone in my daughter's class got COVID, like I would hope to be notified immediately. And I thought that like the school sites were going to kind of start handling that. Is that something?
Yes, if your daughter was considered a close contact, so within less than physical distancing or something else that the Health Services Department helps to determine who those close contacts are, you would be contacted typically the same day as a positive case was determined within the classroom, with a letter letting you know that your child was considered a close contact and how you may need to quarantine or isolate.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Because looking at the COVID numbers throughout the district and then hearing about the classroom closures, it doesn't really like add up. And I was under the impression like before school started that, if one student in a class tested for COVID, the entire class was going to go virtual. And that teacher would take care of all of those students, until they all got a negative COVID test. So was I not listening correctly, or did we kind of just switch it up mid-season?
It's not my impression that if one child retains or has positive for COVID, that the whole classroom closes. That's not typical of what is happening or is the recommendation of Pima County or the health staff. We can get more clarification for you if you'd like to. I can send that to Dr. Trujillo through the health services team, and we can get that over to you.
Okay, I'm not sure if we need more clarification from them, but I think as a board, we need to really figure out if that policy even makes sense in regards to mitigation. Because I certainly don't really feel comfortable with it. I'm not sure how the other board members feel.
Dr. Trujillo.
So I think it's important to note that we are still operating under the direction of the Pima County Health Department when it comes to who they recommend and identify as a close contact with any of our reported case positivity. They're the ones that determine who is a close contact and who would be subjected to our protocols. And so it's very difficult to know when and where they're going to call for a classroom closure. So until they give that responsibility back to the schools, I think we're going to continue to have these situations where you may be on one particular campus and there might be a student that is COVID positive, but maybe had prolonged exposure to everybody in that class, and the Pima County Health Department may deem that particular situation a closure. Versus another situation where a student tested positive at school B in a first grade classroom, but really was only in the classroom for maybe 5 minutes because the symptoms were caught early or the student wasn't feeling good at 8 o'clock in the morning, and that student is immediately over in the nurse's office and didn't have the prolonged exposure to the entire class. In that situation, the Pima County Health Department probably would not close the classroom at all. So it's a situation by situation. We just know that the Pima County Health Department is using the CDC guidelines for the determination of who meets the criteria for close contact and making decisions on classroom closures based off of that information.
Ms. Grijalva?
Yes, Ms. Counts.
Okay. I just want to say for the record, I'm very comfortable sticking with our policy and reflection of the local county's health department guidelines. I do want to talk about the stipends. I'm in agreement with Ms. Grijalva. I'm not really comfortable with that. I am comfortable with just continuing with Maxim for the year, but I think we're getting into touchy territory and hot water and possibly some unintended consequences with offering that large of a stipend for Tuba just for this year.
Ms. Luna Rose?
I just wanted to echo Ms. Counts, yourself, and Ms. Shaw that I think stipends right now might be a little too much. I always think that kind of opens the door for something down the line. If we did it for something, when's the next? And I think right now, going with Maxim might be the best course of action.
Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, President Grijalva. I have 2 questions on slide 4 on the Tuba in general, and then some questions about Maxim. My first question on the slide 4, the survey projected enrollment. We had 442 students enrolled from outside TUSD. I understand that every student in Tuba is assigned to a campus. How are they assigned to a campus if they were outside TUSD or they live outside the TUSD boundaries? And and we don't have this information now. I would like this at the next presentation in 2 weeks. But what is being done to keep them in TUSD so they don't just come here for Tuba and when everything is hopefully better sooner than later, they don't go back to another school, another district. So I'd love to get that information about how we're assigning students outside the district to home schools and what kind of strategies we're implementing to keep them in TUSD after they leave Tuba. And then the second part of that question, with about 40% of students returning to in-person once things are better, whether they have vaccines for under 12 and then they go back to in-person or whatever the criteria the parents will be using, or at least 40% of the parents will be using to bring their students back to in-person education. What is our strategy in terms of upsizing and downsizing the teachers in Tuba? Do we need 40% less teachers at some point, and we have a place for them to go, or are these temporary hires, or how are we marketing these positions? And do we have the capacity in our schools to absorb the 40% of the 2,400, what is that, about 1,100 students back into all of our main campuses?
Those are great questions. I can handle part of it. So there's a public attachment we're going to be posting momentarily. It's a basic spreadsheet. It's going to tell you where all 442 students are. In terms of what that means is they're assigned neighborhood school according to where they live. It doesn't mean that they're in Tuba right now. So, but if we were to flip, if the student did want to attend their neighborhood school, our spreadsheet is going to tell you where they would go. So we'll put that up momentarily and make sure it's available for everybody. And then the second question is we have to be prepared for a couple of different scenarios. And it's not easy. It's part of this pandemic, the shifting sands of the logistics underneath you. Scenario number 1 is post September 29th. If the state is victorious in the pending litigation being led by ASBA and Children's Action Network and AEA, mask optional will become the de facto across the state of Arizona. that could send hundreds of families, not just from our own internal in-person learning, but even from neighboring districts, flooding to Tuba. So you can see a dramatic increase of Tuba fairly quickly after September 29th. The second challenge that we need to be aware of is what Dr. Gravoy-Shaw brought up, looking down the field. Even if Tuba balloons immediately after September 29th, once vaccines become available to students 11 and under, we could see, as that survey suggests, upwards of 37-40%. That's a substantial number of families migrating back to in-person learning. What we need to be prepared for in the ensuing months is, number one, the first challenge is we're going to look at Maxim, and the governing board's going to consider that, and I appreciate that. We need to be working with TEA throughout the next couple of months to be talking about what a migration looks like for Tuba teachers to have to migrate back to in-person learning. That could be a little challenging because we do have a substantial portion. I don't know if it's substantial, I should just say we have a portion of our Tuba workforce that's out of state. So we really have to partner with TEA and look at what does a memorandum of understanding look like if we have to execute that mid-year. What kind of transition would we have to look at to be able to support a Tuba teacher assigned to a particular campus? So we have to stay in front of this, and it's going to take a lot of committee work. That's going to be our primary strategy, to be able to make sure that we're able to cover the migration back. The secondary strategy is we have to go ahead and look at class sizes. That's not a pleasant conversation. I wish I could say that if we had a 36% of our Tuba students migrate back to in-person learning, that we would have the corresponding Tuba teachers ready to serve them. That may not be the case. So we have to take a look at where we have the ability to do that at specific grade levels on specific campuses, so that we're not creating overcrowding and exceeding the agreed upon consensus agreement class size limit. So there is substantial work to be done, and we're going to have to use, we can't waste any time, burn any daylight here, because I do think that this is going to be upon us probably immediately following the Christmas break. So we're going to have some plans in place.
I guess.
So Dr. Trio, if I can
Go ahead,
add,
Mr. Sanchez.
some of that work has already been done. So Dr. Ravi, the one thing that we did was we always accounted for the Tuba students to return back to in-person at some point in time. And therefore, we never reduced the teaching staff over at a brick and mortar site. They are what they're allocated for their full-time instructional teachers. That does include the Tuba students that currently are not attending that school, because we knew in time that the Tuba students could return back, and therefore we wanted to make sure there was already room available within the classroom teacher setting to be able to welcome that student back without us having to go out and hire additional teachers mid-year. So we believe that for the brick and mortar staff, we're in a good place to welcome back those students when they're ready to come back, and as well as do the things that Dr. Trio told. Thank you.
Additional questions? Go ahead, Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, President Grijalva. Thank you for that clarification. So I imagine we have lower classroom sizes right now for those who are in person, and that's going to increase when students come back. And,
correct. So we do have lower classroom sizes in the brick and mortar because we're counting the Tuba students within that setting. As far as the reduction of the Tuba students leaving Tuba, I will tell you what will occur there is I don't believe we'll need a reduction of teaching staff over at Tuba, because then the class size at Tuba will just decrease. And right now our class size over at Tuba is very high. And so as students migrate back to in-person, that class size will come back down to the manageable numbers within the consensus agreement. So we feel like on both ends we'll be in good standing.
All right, that's clear. Thank you for clarifying for that. And Ms. Grove, I have some questions on the Maxim proposal.
Yeah, did anyone have any other board members have questions before Dr. Ravi continues?
No, Ms. Grijalva, but the timer did expire, so I wonder if we have a motion to extend.
I'll make a motion to extend 5 additional minutes.
I'll second.
I have a motion to extend by Dr. Ravi and a second by Ms. Counts. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Go ahead, Dr. Ravi.
Thank you. So for the 19 contracted teachers that will contract with Maxim, two questions on that. Are they the same 19 teachers, not like daily subs where they'll keep on having change of teachers? It'll be the same 19 teachers. And do we know that these 19 teachers are hired and ready to go? Or is it going to be like the situation with the pool testing where we were promised something that was unrealistic and now we need to wait a couple months until we get these teachers even going through Maxim?
Great questions. So our teachers with Maxim, we have been able to verify through the vendor that they are ready to go. They can start, and point number 2, they're going to take over teacher of record duties. So they will be in the classroom until we make a hire. So there's not going to be any sort of daily switcheroo or daily rotating subs. I think it's important also, we want to be very transparent with the public. Renee Weatherless, if you can prepare your cost analysis graphic, we want to be honest about the expense. It is going to be more expensive to go with the contracted contracted service. There is a 29% difference that I'd like Renee just to kind of make sure that the public and our board members is aware of. Ms. Weatherless, while we're on the topic of Maxim.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. President Grijalva and governing board members, we do have a couple slides to bring up. Jane, if you could bring up the cost analysis, please. While we're doing that, what I did was I'm showing a comparison of the rate of the contracted teachers. Currently, we are getting a cost of $58 per hour. And when you start with our average rate, we typically use about $70,000, which is salary and benefits. And when you back out 207 days a year, 7.5 hours per day, our hourly rate of a TUSD teacher then, or at least the average, becomes just over $45. So if you were to compare the two hourly rates, it does seem pretty significant. It's about a 29% difference. However, with contracted teachers, you're only paying for school days. So thank you. So as I said, the $70,000, when you break it down into the 207 days per contract year and 7.5 hours per day, we get $45 an hour. So what I'm showing here is if we were just to look at the entire year, just an annualized estimate, for 19 teachers, it would cost the district $1.3 million. 70,000 times 19 teachers, that's pretty straightforward. On the flip side, for the contractor, we're not paying 207 days. We're paying 180 days. So we do have fewer days at a higher rate. So therefore, if you were to pay for an entire school year, the difference is really about $157,000 or about a 12% difference. So if you go to the next slide, the ask is based on just getting us through the first quarter. So that's what was included in the presentation. And provided we get all those FTE in and we do need to keep them for the remainder of the year, then we would bring forth back to you a procurement item for that vendor to exceed the procurement threshold. So that's why the ask was so little, only $200,000.
Thank you, Ms. Weatherless. And if we were to factor in the $5,000 stipend, and that's $95,000 additional on top of the cost to the district?
If every teacher, if every one of the 19, that is correct. It would be about 6,000 times 19. So
six. I thought it was five. I'm sorry.
Over $100,000.
Okay, I thought it was a $5,000 stipend.
Plus benefits, it would get you at
Right,
six.
so it's $114,000. So I don't.
Yes.
I understand that it's a little more expensive. I guess my concern is what you mentioned, Dr. Trujillo, with putting out the stipend after we talked to TEA and that perhaps it would draw in students or teachers from our classrooms to the online program. I do think that we're going to need to plan regardless for our Tuba program to continue. I think that there are some parents that are very happy with the option, and that's why we see an increase in students from other districts and outside of TUSD coming to that program, because I think that it's a safer option for a lot of families who just feel more comfortable that way. But I'm still wondering, if we don't move forward with the stipend today, but move forward with the contract, what position does that put the district in your opinion?
You know, the administration had two recommendations. We're happy to get one. When we rank order them, we considered Maxim to be vital. The stipend is just kind of an extra. We can certainly live without it.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Robin.
Thank you, President Grijalva. So with Maxim and the 19 teachers and still having positions that we're trying to hire, the last school year with everything else going on, my daughter had 3 different teachers for her 3rd grade gay class. She had a teacher the first quarter, another teacher the second quarter, and a 3rd teacher the second semester last year. And that had added on to the disruption of everything else going on last year. I say that because I wonder if we're going to be contracting out the 19 teachers, should we just make that permanent for the school year and not try to hire and have students change teachers yet again? Because they're changing teachers now. So they have a teacher right now in a larger classroom. They're going to have another teacher like tomorrow or next week or whenever we go live with Maxim. And then another teacher after that and keep on changing teachers. So I would like to have the governing board, speak on this as well. But I'm concerned about contracting 19 teachers and still looking for fill these positions throughout the school year and then disrupting the students' classroom and teacher assignments yet again.
Well, Dr. Ravi, I just want to mention my son is in Tuba. My youngest is in Tuba, and we just found out that his teacher is not going to stay past September 8th. And so I don't think that that's an assurance, quite honestly, whether I feel more comfortable at this point at least ensuring that we have some consistency for our students. Because right now, some of them have a daily sub, which either in person or online it's really disruptive.
No, I appreciate it. My
Excuse
point
me,
is
Ms. Governing Board President Grijalva, members of the board, we are at the 5-minute extension. Do you want to make another motion?
I don't think we specified how many minutes.
5 minutes.
We did 5 minutes.
Did you say 5 minutes?
I think
Yes, I did say
Dr.
5
Ravi
minutes.
did.
You said 5 minutes. Okay, well, go. We're watching the clock, so if you want to go ahead and ask for another additional
Right,
period of time.
I'll
so we
ask
can
for
finish.
additional time not to be limited to continue discussion.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Go ahead, Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, Michelle, for clarifying and keeping us on track here.
You're
So
welcome.
my point was not to not hire the Maxim teachers, but if we hire them and they come in to try to minimize the disruptions by still looking for teachers to replace the Maxim teachers. If we have a teacher or 19 teachers from Maxim that are willing to stay longer with us and then to try to find another teacher to fill that position is what I would try to avoid if that were possible.
Mr. Grijalva.
Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you. How many of these 19 teachers, Dr. Trujillo, are they K-8? Are they high school? What are we looking at in terms of where they are?
So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Sanchez and Mrs. Hewitt. They've got the specific breakdown. I know that elementary has been a particular challenge in terms of being able to staff. So I would say probably the majority are elementary, but we'll turn it over to the team.
So the actual numbers of the 19, the breakdown is for elementary. Elementary makes up grades K through 6. We have 14 openings there. Secondary, which makes up grade levels 7 through 12, we have 5 openings.
Okay. So, follow-up question to that. So, and I think I'm piggybacking off Dr. Ravi's point about making. This has already been such a tumultuous year. I think the underlying message is that we want to try to maintain some sort of consistency. I think that's really helpful for any student, whether they're in, what grade they are. But I honestly don't know how we mitigate that without, I think, having a constant check-in with your reports to us, to the board, on how that's going. And maybe perhaps allowing us some flexibility to make changes to how a contract with a Maxim would work.
Absolutely. I will say that I would fully prefer Dr. Ravi's recommendation for the additional reason of the prospective migration of students back to in-person learning. If we're going through a temp service, that position just simply goes away with the temp service. And we're not in the difficult position of having to DIT or transfer a permanent employee into another assignment. So I think that's an additional reason where an agreement with Maxim for the yearly assignment would probably be ideal.
Any additional questions? Ms. Counts?
So it seems unlikely that we would fill many of those positions with the start of the school year already happening. I do think it's a good point about the DIT. But Dr. Trujillo, we still have classrooms, brick and mortar classrooms that are staffed by permanent substitutes, right? So I think I like the proposal as it is with Maxim and keeping those positions open, because the more that we can bring in qualified educators under our fold, that will just benefit our district, I believe, in the long run. And I don't think that we're going to have many of those positions filled anyway at this point in the year. So I like the Maxim proposal as it is.
Okay, any additional questions? So Dr. Trujillo, did you want us to vote on this item, move the item in this item or in 7.2?
I would prefer that we move it in 7.2.
Okay, great.
That way, we've got the discussion behind us when we get to the ESSER presentation.
Okay, any additional points on this item?
No,
Okay.
we feel pretty good. And like I said, we had 2 recommendations, and this is our preference.
Can we move to 7.4 then? That's transportation update.
Transportation
August 24th,
update.
That's September 9th.
Before we move this, Grijalva, I'm going to ask a clarifying
Dr.
question.
Ravi,
Do you need action from the board? So last or 2 meetings ago, we had action requiring all schools to have the pool testing live before September 29th. From the rest of the presentation, we see that's not going to be possible. Is that something we just know that can't happen, or do we need action from the board to extend that date?
I would like for the board to extend the date. We, as I mentioned in the superintendent's report, in our previous conversations with Concentric, and then not just with us, but even in the presentation that Concentric gave the community and you, we were all under the impression, and certainly the presentation pretty much assured us that staffing for the entire district would not be a problem. In fact, during that presentation, references were made to other districts like in Maryland and back on the East Coast that were comparable to our size that they were able to staff. When we started having the logistical meetings to get ready for the first phase for the 20, it was brought to our attention by the Concentric team that they do rely on staffing agencies and that they would need time to be able to staff even just our first 20 schools. Not being in a position to do all 86 sites by the October 1st deadline. So we would need that extension. We do feel good about the staffing situation with the 20, but unfortunately to continue to ramp up, we're going to need that additional time. We still want to be very aggressive with our rollout and really kind of push as much as possible to have a district-wide completion by the week that we return from fall break.
So
we're gonna have to
considering
go
that
faster.
it wasn't specifically noticed, can we have a specific item regarding pool testing and then we can sort of modify it?
We
I mean,
can.
I think in 2 weeks we'll have a little more information
We can do
about
that
where
on
we are.
September 23rd, absolutely.
Okay. Does that suffice? Okay. Thank you. Now, 7.4 transportation.
Ms. Grijalva?
Ms. Shaw.
Sorry, before we move on, I do have a question. Since like the Concentric thing is being held up a little bit, I'm wondering if, like, at the last board meeting, I asked if we can make sure that each school site's COVID tests were available, the ones in the office, if they can be available, and if they're expired, if we could get new ones. Have we moved forward with that?
Ms. Shaw, the Pima County Health Department, we got a briefing at our meeting on Tuesday. They distributed almost 35,000 tests, and the majority, like percentage-wise, went to Tucson Unified. I visited Tucson High yesterday, and she said that as soon as she asks, she gets more. So hopefully, if you hear anything different, I mean, obviously talk to Dr. Trujillo, but I think the Pima County Health Department is ready with more.
Okay, thank
I
you.
hope that helps. Yeah, of course. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. Transportation update, Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, I'd like to welcome Martha Zamora back, our Director for Transportation, along with, do I see Mr. Young? Is Mr. Young a part of this item? So I'm going to put Mr. Young on blast here. It is his birthday, holding steady at 39 years old.
Happy birthday!
I want to say happy birthday to Mr. Young.
Thank you, everyone.
I don't
Holding
know
at
that you want
39.
us to sing, but happy birthday. And thank you for sharing part of your birthday evening with us. Okay, so who's taking the transportation? Mr. Young?
We're going to hear from Martha on this.
Okay.
I was going to say it's his birthday wish. Now let him take it over.
Right.
Good evening, Dr. Trujillo, President Grijalva, governing board members. Today's presentation says the ongoing updates on transportation. Next page, please. So today's agenda will cover driver capacity, contracted services, hubs and routes, and students served. Next, please. So I am extremely excited. We're extremely excited about the driver pipeline. I can let you know today that as of this week, we have 2 new certified drivers that started driving this week. And our pipeline, we can see that we have 21, our projection shows 21 drivers that will be ready by the end of October. So we have a cohort of 6 that started August 23rd that are projected to be ready by October 1st. And we have another cohort that started on September 7th of 8 that will end by October 15th. And then we show a projection of another 7 that will end by October 29th. So that's really exciting, and it gives us hope that we're moving along here. Next, please. Here's a list of our contracted vendors. So we have been working with all the contracted vendors that are available to us, and we are now being told that we have 2 additional drivers. Beeline and Grayline are the companies that provide yellow buses. So we have 2 additional yellow buses that will be able to be on the road starting next week. And then we have Kango that provides door-to-door transportation, and they are taking 10 routes to start this next week. Next, please. As far as our hubs and routes, since August 24th, we have 20 additional hubs that I guess it allows us to accomplish our goal in creating more options for parents. We've also added an additional 25 routes in neighborhoods, allowing parents to have more options near their homes. Next page, please. So in addition to the 20 hubs that we were able to add, I can also tell you that we've been able to route an additional 85 students. That includes exceptional ed, open enrolled, and neighborhood students. Next, please. And that concludes our presentation. Questions?
Dr. Trujillo, did you want to add anything before I open to questions?
Yes, I met with Martha and or Mrs. Zamora and Mr. Young earlier this week. We're very excited to begin the process of inviting parents to join our transportation advisory group, and I'm looking forward to meeting with them. We've set a date of in the next few weeks to try to get our first meeting. We want to meet with them monthly and start partnering with them and making them a part of the decision-making process and feedback on upcoming recommendations for transportation. I'm also very excited about the drivers that are now in classroom instruction phase and getting ready to finish their required hours. I'm excited to note that these 21 drivers are going to be on the road for us at the end of October, as all of these 3 cohorts will finish their required hours of instruction. That's a game changer to be able to put 21 drivers back out. That is going to bring some much needed relief to the families that are using the hub system right now and move us substantially closer to our goal of neighborhood route restoration.
Okay, board members, any questions? I think it's good movement. I'm glad to see it.
Oh, I have one. I almost forgot. We are also looking at the governing board for some approval here. It doesn't have to be tonight. We can certainly come back. This is study action tonight, and it's also study action on September 23rd. We would like to be aggressive in the driver recruitment game. It's highly competitive with our sister districts. And the issue of trainee pay. These 21 drivers that are in our pipeline right now, and they are going through their required hours of classroom instruction, when you look at what attracted them to the position, it probably was the $16 an hour. The challenge is, as a trainee, you make 13, Martha, is it 13 and how much? 13.30?
Yes, I believe it's 13.
You make 13 even. What we would like to do is we'd like to increase that to 15. We want to be able to win the battle with the trainees and be able to attract trainees that might be in other districts or other situations not making the same amount of money. We want to minimize the amount of trainees that leave before completing their 40 hours of classroom instruction for financial reasons, because they can't hang on until they get the $16 an hour. So we would like the governing board to consider that pay adjustment. If the board would like some additional information, we can certainly return on the 23rd and take action at that time.
So for this specific item, the attachment has the ESER 3 request. So that's what was posted on the item? Are you requesting that we, in addition to this, add?
Yeah, I'll turn it over to
differential pay?
Renee Weatherless. Did we post the actual financials?
Unless I'm looking at the wrong, no?
Well, the cost for this differential is only going to be for the 6 weeks training period, so it's going to be very minimal.
Okay. So let's do this. I want to throw that out there for the governing board as a study right now, to just think about it, consider it. And then I would like us to, Renee, let's return for formative action, definitive action on the 23rd. That way we have the, even though it's minimal, we do want to show a specific dollar amount.
Okay.
Of what the 6 week cost would be.
Ms. Grijalva?
Yes, Ms. Counts.
I have a question for Dr. Trio. Do we have any data to justify that this is why they're leaving? Or
We don't have any definitive data. We're just trying to be aggressive. We're trying to be competitive. And we're trying to look for an edge. And we've compared trainee wages for the other Southern Arizona districts, and we want to jump out ahead of them. And this would definitely do that.
So would this put us above other local districts in the training
This would make
salary?
us number one, with the exception of Vail, but we still beat Vail. Vail, the drivers make $15.62 an hour, but they have the same rate. Their drivers that are in classroom instruction make $15.62, and their drivers that are on the road make $15.62. So we still come out ahead.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. Grijalva?
Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, President Grijalva. So every time I've ever had an orientation or training specific to my job, my rate of pay have always been the same as my final rate of pay. And I'm curious why the rate of pay for our bus drivers that are hired and going through trainings or orientations or whatever they're going through to finalize the certification, be ready to drive buses, would be any different, and why wouldn't we just have a $16 wage for them or whatever their final wage is going to be?
So I will turn it over to Martha, Ms. Zamora, but I can tell you that I think the spirit of it was incentive to not leave your trainee program because you have that wage at the end of the line. And I do know that in years past we've experienced some struggles getting the trainees to complete their 40 hours. But I'll turn it over to Martha for more specific rationale.
Sure. So during the training process, they're working to obtain their CDL. And basically what Dr. Trujillo mentioned, we want there to be some incentive. We don't want them to be in our class for endless weeks. We want them to try to get to the goal of becoming a certified CDL driver and moving on to be able to drive our students to and from school.
So, Ms. Grijalva, can I ask you a question?
Yes, of course.
So does that mean that the training is self-paced?
No, it's not self-paced, but through the process, there are different areas that some candidates have a little bit more struggle. So even though we provide the training, we want individuals that might be having a little bit of a hard time to be able to take the books with them and the information that we give them to take them home with them and then come back ready for the class.
Okay.
As they don't, so.
Okay, so Dr. Trujillo, did you want us to approve this request?
Not at this time. I just
Okay.
wanted I think we've had a good read on where board members are, and what we're going to do is return on the 23rd with some information on wages from the other Southern Arizona district, the cost of what the 6 weeks would be. That way we get a more formal motion for action at that time.
And I know it's incredibly competitive, and so there's a lot of competition out there. Okay, so now we're going back onto the consent agenda.
Ms. Grijalva, sorry.
I'm sorry, Ms. Shaw.
Sorry. I mean, I'm okay with moving forward with paying the bus drivers $15 now. I honestly didn't think that there was like a lesser pay for training. I don't remember that being presented to us. And I think we could have avoided a lot of this crisis if we had just stuck them at 15 or so, like we intended to. Do we have to wait till the end of the month to increase their pay, or I feel like we're just saving $1 that way? Why can't we just do it tonight?
Ms. Shaw, my concern is that it's not properly posted, and so if anyone looking on the attachments would have no idea what we voted on. So I would rather wait 2 weeks. It would be retro in order to ensure that it was properly posted. Because the attachment doesn't indicate any of this differential pay, regardless of the amount. I don't think that's not the issue for me. I don't know about other people, but Dr.
I thought Ms. Weatherless said it was very
it's not the cost. It's the fact that on the agenda item, there's no reference to it. It's not in the breakdown of costs. Other than Dr. Trujillo mentioning it here, there's no written attachment that shows what we would vote on.
Ms. Grijalva?
Dr. Trujillo wanted to add something.
So yeah, Miss, and that's another reason why I would prefer the 23rd, because the letter of the law would probably allow for an approval, but that's not the spirit. This is a study action item. Could the governing board, it has been posted as an action, could the governing board vote yes? But the spirit says, hey, let's come back on the 23rd. Let's show what the other Southern Arizona districts pay. Let's show the 6-week cost. Let's have a more explicit request for action in the BAI language. I think that honors the spirit a little bit better. This was still valuable for us, as a study item, to just engage in the discussion and kind of hear where everybody stands, and we'll drive our recommendation on the 23rd.
Okay, Ms. Luna Rose.
Yes. So I agree with Ms. Shaw. I wouldn't be opposed to putting something in front of the board tonight, but I also want to follow the spirit of the law. So I'm wondering if Mr. Ross, could you, seeing that I'm still learning about this, is there, and I know Dr. Trio just explained, but what is the harm of doing something like that?
Mr. Ross.
Thank you, governing board members. I would agree with Dr. Trujillo's assessment that the way that the item was agendized, it would be possible to vote tonight if a motion was made. But I also understand kind of the spirit argument of full transparency. Would somebody looking at the agenda know that that's what you were going to vote on tonight? But is this potential action within the scope of the agenda item? I would say that I would be able to say it is. But I do get the full transparency spirit argument as well.
Thank you. Even if it was mentioned in one of the slides, I think it would be okay. But we just don't have any mention of it at all. Dr. Ravi.
I think my concern, and I would be more hesitant, because I think, and Renee, please correct me if I'm wrong, we don't know exactly how much it's going to cost. And I understand it's not going to cost a lot, but before I vote on something, I'd like to know how much it's going to cost and where that money's coming from, M&O or ESSER, and kind of get all the data ready before I vote in favor of a change in something that's going to cost our district something.
Ms. Grijalva, I hope we can move on, because I know that this is, if we voted for this tonight, we're going to get a lot of flack for lack of transparency and voting on things that are not clearly agendized.
I agree. I think that Ms. Zamora could indicate to the bus drivers that there was no objection to it. It just, we need to agendize it properly. Okay, thank you.
Ms.
Can we move
Grijalva?
on? Ms. Shaw.
For my final comment, I mean, I feel like the whole spirit argument, like, let's think about the spirit of these drivers who are going to go 6 weeks with $2 less of pay.
I totally understand. It's just not agendized properly, and I don't feel comfortable with
But
that.
it's still legal for us to do that. Like, it's not that much, to be quite honest. These are people's lives we're talking about.
How much is it, Ms. Shaw?
Let me break out my
I mean,
calculator.
that's my point. We don't have any data.
It's
Unless there is a
very-
motion, I'm going to go ahead and move on.
I'd like to make a motion to approve of the $2 increase for the trainee bus drivers.
Okay, I have a motion. It dies for lack of a second. So, Dr. Trujillo, I think you heard pretty clearly. We'd like to see it back on the next agenda.
Yeah, and my original intention was just to have the discussion as the
Absolutely.
study portion of this.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So now we're going back on the agenda and we're on consent. Dr. Trujillo.
Yeah, Governing Board President Grijalva, members of the Governing Board, I'd like for you to consider the consent agenda as arranged and presented, items 5.2 through items 5.16. I do want to make a special note that for the item, let's see, approval,
5.11.
it is 5. Where is it? Where Dr. Robbie?
511.
511, item 5.11. Dr. Gervois Shaw will be abstaining, so I would like to recommend that we pull 5.11 as a separate vote, so he has the opportunity to do it, while still
Okay.
moving the consent agenda forward.
Okay, so we have a motion to move item 5.2 through 5.16, excluding 511.
Correct.
I'll go ahead and move the item.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Count Seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
I have a discussion point.
Okay,
Sorry.
did you want to pull an item, Ms. Shaw, or?
Yeah, I would like to pull item 5.10.
Okay.
It's a huge
So
increase.
would you, did you want more information, or did you want to vote on the item separately?
I would like to vote on it separately.
Okay, Ms. Counts, would you be amenable to adjusting your second to exclude 510 and 511? Okay, as will I. Okay, so I have a motion and a second excluding 510 and 511 and approving 5.2 through 5.16 except for those two. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Ms. Shaw, 510. You pulled the item?
Yep, I'll give a little explanation as to why it's at the large increase in this. So I think it warrants a presentation. 1.5 million. We can
Dr.
get a
Trujillo, is
presentation.
this part of the Tuba, some of the information from Tuba, or is this additional expenditure?
So we've got 9 Tuba teachers at a cost of $623,700. And then we have 6 potential remote teachers at $415,800. I'd like to welcome Flory Hewitt and, of course, Dr. Salmon to address any additional questions and concerns about this item.
Dr. Trujillo, just to clarify, is this the other teachers that were hired by Maxim that was referenced in the previous item?
No.
No. Okay. Who, Dr. Salmon or?
Mrs. Hewitt, Dr. Salmon?
Yes, this request is for the additional Tuba teachers that we had to hire through XED. We originally had a budget to hire contract XED teachers and TAs, and so we've used that current funding to hire our brick and mortar staff. And so the increase that we're asking for is to cover the 10 Tuba teachers. Plus, we also had requests for additional remote opportunities for students with self-contained IEPs in order to attend virtually, and the programming at Tuba just wasn't sufficient to provide that level of instruction. And so we've been working with parents trying to figure out another avenue to provide remote instruction for students with the self-contained levels of IEPs.
I do think that this, the slides in this item could have had that information in there, and perhaps the item wouldn't have needed to be pulled. Because it's not, it doesn't explain why. So if we could do that in the future, I think that that would be helpful. Ms. Shaw, do you have additional questions?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Grijalva. I'm just wondering, like, these jobs aren't posted at this point, needing XED teachers for Tuba, correct?
Yes, it's posted.
It's posted? Okay, I guess I didn't see that part, but yeah, because I felt like, you know, we fill all the vacancies for XED teachers, like in person? Like, what is the state of that? Or is there a migration of XED students into the Tuba program now? So we're kind of killing two birds with one stone with this.
Yes, that's a great question. We still have some unfilled in-person teachers, and we have had a difficult time finding a lot of in-person XED teachers at this point. We haven't had as much trouble. Maxim has been able to provide the remote teachers that we've requested, and so that's been very helpful for us.
Okay.
Did you want to go ahead and move the item?
Sure, I will move the item.
Okay, I'll second. So Ms. Shaw moved the item and I seconded. Any additional discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Item passes unanimously. Now we're on 511. I know that Dr. Ravi pulled the item.
I just pulled kind of a conflict of interest that's declared with higher ground, so I'm going to abstain from this one.
Okay. Any board members have a motion?
I'll move the item.
Thank you. Ms. Counts moved the item. Ms. Luna Rose seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item passes unanimously 4-0 with Dr. Ravi abstaining. Okay, now we are on item, 6.1, Interim Director, School Safety and Security. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, this request is for the extension of David Vildusea to continue to serve in the capacity of Interim Director for School Safety and Security for the remainder of the semester, which would be through December 18th, 2020.
I'm sorry, through December 18th?
Through December 18th, which is the official last day of the semester.
Okay.
I'll move
Thank
the
you.
item.
Thank you. Ms. Counts moved the item.
Second.
And Dr. Ravi seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Dr. Trujillo, 6.4, Appeal of Pima County versus State of Arizona.
Yes, the governing board has had an opportunity to receive its legal guidance in executive session. Now, in accordance with policy, we're ready for the public consideration of this request or this request for direction. I'll turn it over to Mr. Ross, who may want to facilitate this item.
And we also have
Thank
Mr.
you,
Converse.
Dr. Trujillo and governing board members. I see Mr. Converse is with us as well. So I don't know, since you're here, Bruce, if you'd like to just give a brief description of what this action would do.
Sure. In 2018-19, the State Department of Education did not pay the full amount that we calculated was due in additional state aid for education. The county and the district brought an action in the tax court. The tax court agreed with our position and held that the state owed us the money. The state appealed it to the Court of Appeals, which is the intermediate court in the state, and the intermediate court disagreed with the tax court. And this is to approve the district taking it to the highest level, the Supreme Court of the state, to get them to reinstate the decision of the tax court, indicating that the state does in fact owe us the additional state aid for education under ARS section 15972E.
And that's approximately at this point $10 million. The order was $8.1 million, but but it would carry to the next year, which is another 2 or so. So we're talking about a $10 million amount owed for additional aid to the district, right?
Right. It'd be about $10 million in past, and although given the circumstances and the way this fluctuates with real estate values, it wasn't an issue this year, but it is possible that it may become an issue in future years, and that's why we do recommend that the district take it on up.
Okay, any additional information, Mr. Ross?
I would just add that I learned today that Pima County is also planning to join us as they did in the trial court and the Court of Appeals. So we're traveling this road together with our partners over at the county.
Thank you. Board members, any questions?
I'd like to move the item.
Thank you, Ms. Counts.
I'll second.
And thank you. So Ms. Counts moved the item, and Ms. Luna Rose seconded. Any additional discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Ross and Mr. Converse, for the update.
Thank you.
And now we're on 6.5, extend the 2021 TEA consensus agreement through September 30th. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, I'd like to welcome our Director for Employee Relations, Ms. Mari Salamesa, and our President for the Tucson Education Association, Margaret Cheney. They will be together for the next three items, okay, for 6.5, 6.6, and 7.1, as we entertain or ask the Governing Board to entertain a request to extend the TEA White Collar Agreement and, of course, the Consensus Agreement for TDRA and B out through September 30th as we await ratification. Okay, Ms. Mesa, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Simply, we're asking for an extension until September 30th so we may finalize and ratify. And I'm joined here by with Margaret Cheney.
Did you want to add anything, Ms. Cheney? Did you want to add anything, Ms. Cheney? You're muted. Try to unmute now. You weren't, okay. Did you want to add anything, Ms. Cheney? Oh no. I can't hear you, I'm sorry. Ms. Cheney? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. You look unmuted, but I don't know. Do you want to text me?
Ms. Cheney, if you want to text me as well right before the next item.
Okay. All right. Any questions, board members? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Okay. Ms. Luna Rose moved the item and Ms. Count seconded. Any additional discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Item passes unanimously. Now we're on 6.6, extend the 2021 TEA White Collar Food and Food Service Agreement through September 30th. Dr. Trujillo or Ms. Mesa?
Yes, President Grijalva, board members. Same, we're looking for an extension for the TEA White Collar Food Service Agreement through September 30th. Ms. Mesa, and I do see now that we have Ms. Cheney.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Same, we're asking for the extension, joined here by Ms. Cheney. I have not received a text message from Ms. Cheney, but we have been in communication and are in agreement that the agreement should be extended. And she's nodding, so that's a good sign.
Right, okay.
I'd like to move the item.
Okay.
I'll second.
Ms. Counts moved the item and Ms. Luna Rose seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Thank you. And now we're on 7.1, review, approve, adopt the revised 301 pay for performance plan for the school year 21-22. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, I'd like to turn it over to Mari Salamesa. For those of you in the viewing public, it's just important to note that, of course, the governing board took the bold step in accordance with what the teachers have long asked for to reduce the amount of 301 monies that are allocated and assigned to pay for performance and increase the amount of money that teachers see in their supplemental base. However, per state statutes, it doesn't matter what percentage of 301 funds are allotted to pay for performance. It could be 1%, 5%, or 100%. We are mandated to have a pay for performance plan, even for an allotment as small as 1%. The district does have a 301 pay for performance committee. It's one of our most outstanding and productive committees. They meet throughout the year, and they come together collaboratively to put together the recommendations for what the requirements of the pay for performance plan is. So here tonight, the captains of this committee, President Cheney for TEA, and of course, our Employee Relations Director, Maricela Mesa, to talk about the proposal for 21-22.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. President Grijalva, governing board members, today we present to you the 301 Pay for Performance plan that has been ratified. Next slide, please. Here we have listed the committee members. We began meeting in the spring. I want to thank them all for their time. It's representation of teachers and site administrators. And what we did is we worked through the plan. And also what happened in May, we came to the board and the board approved the 301 expenditure proposal. We then used what was approved by the governing board and incorporated that and those dollars into the plan that has been subsequently ratified. That has taken place. So now we are asking for approval as to the plan. As Dr. Trujillo stated, one of the biggest highlights was the fact that we reduced the amount to be received from performance pay, but we put that into supplemental base where there is it's guaranteed money that will be coming without the performance component. Otherwise, the plan itself is substantially similar to prior plans. So if you'd like me to go through the presentation, I'm happy to do so.
Board members, did you want to see the rest of the presentation? I'm not getting an indication.
Oh, no, thank you.
Okay. So do we have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Counts moved the item. I'll
Second.
Oh, Dr. Ravi was second. Any additional discussion? I'm very impressed with the collaboration. I think it's important that the pay for performance was reduced. We've had some additional information about this in previous meetings, and it is attached to the item. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we're on 7.2, Tucson Unified School District ESSER 3 expenditure proposal. Dr. Trujillo has stepped away, so Mr. Lanza, are you presenting on this item?
I am, yes.
Okay, wonderful.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, President Grijalva, Board Clerk Shaw, Governing Board members, and Dr. Trujillo. What you'll see tonight is an update of our immediate needs for ESSER 3. And at the end here, you'll see the request for funds to be released from ESSER 3. So next slide. So to begin, just a review again of our 3 different ESSER grants. So ESSER 1, $18.5 million, that essentially was last year. It has been, items have been purchased out of there and reimbursements are currently occurring. ESSER 2, all amounts have been fully allocated. Currently, schools and departments have budgets for these, and staff has been hired to begin the school year with ESSER 2. And much of the purchasing right now is occurring in our schools and our departments of the different items that are needed to start the school year. ESSER 3 is what we'll look at tonight again, $172.9 million. Some components of that, public input sessions were required. Those have occurred over the summer. The budget is being developed, and some of the requests that you'll see tonight are for immediate budget needs that we have at the beginning of this school year. Next slide. And as a reminder, with ESSER and all those ESSER grants that you saw, those are federal grants. They do have compliance pieces. There's a lot of parts to this, but really the big summary of it is that prevention, preparation, and response to the coronavirus pandemic, coming out of that, and then obviously now going forward, and a lot of academic pieces there that we're addressing, but also still very real needs with things with COVID tracing, the contact tracing that you're going to see. The areas that you see bulleted there on your slides, those are the areas that we use to guide many of our decisions and things that were allowable for purchase. So academic loss, educational technology, mental health support, so social emotional learning, recruitment, retention, personal protective equipment, distance learning, and minimizing transmission. Those are still kind of our guiding principles that we use in looking at different items whether or not they qualify for ESSER funds. Next slide, please. And updates on ESSER 3 specifically now. So the grant details of this basically require that we get public input. 20% of the funds are required to be used as a set aside for academic loss and for specific subgroups of students. So you'll see some of that tonight in a couple of the items, specific subgroups of students that these funds are being targeted towards. And then those grant funds, as a reminder, are available basically for 3 more years through the end of September 2024. We have immediate needs tonight that we're going to outline for you, and that is the focus of the request tonight. Next slide. And again, a summary of ESSER 3, and this will be a piece every time we do request funds from ESSER 3 for the governing board to approve. I want to be able to show you where we're at each time we present this, the amount of funds that the governing board has approved and the amount of funds that are left in ESSER 3. So this slide, basically just the start of this. Last month, August 8th, the governing board approved $23,336,800 worth of funds. With that amount as our starting point, so that left $149,588,417 left in the ESSER 3 funds. Next slide. So tonight, this is the focus, and I will go through each one of these items here just so you have a little more detail. There are some shifts further down based on some of the discussion about Tuba stipends that will change what you see on the screen here. But you first look at the top items. The top 6 items deal with our health services. The very top item was one that was approved by the governing board at the last governing board meeting. Dr. Trujillo requested some additional funding for COVID contact tracing within our district and working with Pima County Health. And so that top item was approved at the last governing board meeting for, I believe it was for 3 positions to help staff contact tracing. The second and third item deal specifically with the extra workload that our nursing staff is taking on in doing contact tracing. The second item is specifically for nurses. It is requesting added duty for nurses as they follow up with just the volume of contact tracing that many times goes after hours. So after school is ended, the nurses are staying, they are doing phone calls, they're talking with the teachers, kind of compiling all the data that they need for contact tracing. What we are asking for is for nurses doing that work to receive added duty at $25 an hour. That includes the benefit costs in there. Right now, we're asking to budget 1,600 hours and see how far that gets us into this school year. That's at a cost of $48,000. And that would be specifically for nurses, again, after hours contact tracing. The third item you see there is for our director and coordinator positions in the organization of really district-wide. All 88 of our schools, the compiling of the data, the tracking of the cases, and the reporting and the communication that has to occur with Pima County Health Department and even the state. That is a stipend there that we are looking at for those positions. That's a total of $14,400. And that is for, the additional work being put in with coordinating the contact tracing for COVID. The following items, nurses hard to fill recruitment stipend, and then the health assistants recruitment stipends. Those are recruitment stipends. Those are for positions that we have open, and really the immediate need to be able to recruit in our nurses and health assistants to be able to meet the increased health needs that we have in our schools, and really to round out and provide our students in our schools all the support that they need. That is for 10 nurse positions and hopefully 20 health assistant positions, $5,000 stipend for the nurse position, $1,000 stipend for the health assistant position. These are very similar. We basically modeled those 2 recruitment stipends after previous stipends that we used for transportation and trying to recruit in. And then you'll see that same $5,000 hard to fill. That's also one that we've used for other hard to fill positions across the district. Again, with the costs, with benefits included there, we're looking at $60,000 for the nurses recruitment stipend, $24,000 for the health services, the health assistants recruitment stipend. And then the very last health services item there is for advertising, to advertise, to get the word out and hopefully draw in candidates and being able to use some of the ESSER dollars to recruit to fill those positions. So top 6 are specifically for health services and the immediate needs there. The next 5 items right in the middle of your screen, refugee student services. This is a subgroup, a specific subgroup of students in our district that have some immediate needs and support. Many of the academic plans that we put into place, the tutoring, after-school programming, even the summer that we had this, or the summer school we had this last year, did not always have as much academic language support as was needed. So I've met with Dr. Mahoney, and we've put together a plan to be able to provide additional support for our ELL students, but specifically refugee students. And so you see here, summer language support would be for next school year, but the language support specialists, those are 3 positions, $135,000. Those provide specific academic support for learning loss and language support for students attending tutoring and after-school programming. The after-school programming specifically is at 10 schools, are high concentration areas of this subgroup, and that is to provide the support in the after-school programming. And then the last refugee student service item there, language learning line subscription. This is available to some areas of our district, but this would be specifically for refugee student services, being able to provide immediate real-time support in a number of languages that our tutors and our teachers would be able to use in working with students. So that again, the middle items, refugee student services, subgroup specific, being able to provide support that's unique to them. And then the last items you see with schools, water bottle filling stations. This is to finalize an additional cost to install water bottle filling stations across our district. This is to finish up 275 water bottle filling stations in all of our schools, and there's some additional buildings in our district. The second school item there, that is an item that we are, from my understanding, going to be pulling out, the teacher stipend for Tuba. Third item for schools, the academic continuation services. So this is, I believe, part of a presentation to follow here, but this is in connection with providing quarantine students teachers that are able to work with them while they're on quarantine, away from school, just ensuring that continuation of academic services if students are moved out of that school setting to a quarantine setting and having to do that virtually. So that's 3 teaching positions that we are asking for to be able to make sure that transition is seamless as they go from school to a quarantine situation. And then the last item there is the contracted services. That is the Maxim item that you heard about. So that is the contracted services for those 19 teachers. Now, this is only for the first quarter of the school year. This is, I believe, matches the same number you saw in Ms. Weatherly's presentation. That's a dollar amount to get us through the first quarter of the school year. If we continue that through the rest of the school year, that dollar will actually come back and kind of put together what a whole year could look like if we get to that point. So in total here, this dollar amount there has the Tuba stipends in it. It's just over $2 million. If you were to take out the Tuba stipends, we would be at $1,652,445. And so 1.6 million is what we are asking for the items on the list. Each one has a specific area that it's covering that is allowed through ESSER funds and eligible for ESSER funds. Next slide. We'll kind of do a summary here of where that leaves us. So if this were to be approved tonight, this is what the governing board would have approved up to this point for the ESSER 3 items. So the one adjustment there will be obviously the Tuba stipends not being in there. So if you were to take the Tuba stipends out, the total amount approved by the governing board would be $24,989,245. So just short of $25 million would be the amount that the governing board would have approved up to this point if you approve that item, the items tonight. And last slide. So this is the request tonight. We are asking for approval of that budget for immediate needs, and then the procurement of those items going forward. And that is the end of the presentation, and I'll open it up to questions.
Okay, board members, questions? Dr. Ravi.
Thank you, President Grijalva. So question on the health services. So when we approved the first item on there, my understanding was we approved it if the county was no longer doing the contact tracing. This allows us to hire the folks to do it ourselves. Is that the same for the other items? Are these for, at least for the second and third item on there? The first, second item, we were trying to approve the contract, COVID contract tracing added duty and the health services COVID tracing extra duty. Is that if the county is no longer providing those services, or is that regardless of what the county decides to do?
Dr. Trujillo.
My understanding is that is an item that they're already taking on. So I'm not sure if the Pima County Health would really affect that. Dr. Trujillo, did you want to comment on that?
I'll go ahead and elaborate. So that's a two-part question for Board Member Gravoy Shaw. So I want to take the first one. He's absolutely correct. Tomorrow morning, I do have a meeting with epidemiology from Pima County Health Department to kind of map out what those roles and responsibilities would look like and their guidance in terms of what qualifications would look like in advance of any situation where the full 100% of the contact tracing responsibilities and the designation of close contacts and who goes into quarantine and isolation falls to the districts, we would be ready. I think with regard to added duty and what's going on with contact tracing, here's the portion of the work that's assigned to the Health Services Department, okay? The portion of that work is when a student is identified as positive, as testing positive for COVID-19, the Pima County Health Department is looking to us for names. It's looking to us for an examination of class rosters, an examination of if students were on a bus, who are those students that were on the bus, so that we can turn those names over to Pima County Health Department so they can contact those families, make the determination of who's a close contact and who's not. It's the compilation of those names on top of the testing that's going on. You also have your health assistants that are testing pretty much the majority of the day and administering those PCR tests. And then on top of that, having to find out, compile all of these names to be able to turn into the Pima County Health Department. And then on top of that, we now have the added responsibility of the distribution of the letters that Pima County Health Department has assigned to schools, not just TUSD. And then that on top of their normal health assistant duties. So there are two separate asks. So that's going to add for those the added duty that they're carrying out right now.
Any additional questions? Okay. Can I get a motion for the expenditure, just to confirm, Dr. Trujillo, it's $1,652,445.
And we want to be extra clear that this motion excludes and eliminates our initial request for $414,000 to be used for Tuba teacher stipends.
Okay.
So
So Ms. Luna Rose moved the item.
I'll second.
Ms. Powell second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes unanimously. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Great work, thank you,
so
team.
much, Mr. Lanza. And now we're on to information item 8.1, academic continuation services and date program update. Dr. Trujillo.
Yeah, so we're not going to do a formal presentation, okay? So this is, I want to just provide some clarification. We posted some attachments for the public to reference.
Can you speak straight into the mic? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So there's not going to be a formal presentation because we posted some attachments that the public can review and certainly that the board members can probably have reviewed or could reference. I'll be referencing some information from those items, as well as our most recent response to the plaintiffs with regard to concerns about DAPE that we've since submitted to the court and special master. So I just want to start with just some general information. Our DAPE department consists of 12 fully certified teachers, okay? And the consensus agreement that we have with TEA doesn't specifically reference a specific class size for a DAPE teacher. So the default is what is in the consensus agreement with secondary teachers, middle school and high school, which is 33 students for middle school and 36 respectively for high school. When we have a team of 12 teachers right now, we only have 10 students in need of DAPE services at this particular point in time. So we do have a responsibility to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible with the resources that the taxpayers fund the district with, in this case, desegregation. Whether we have 5 students, 10 students, or 100 students in DAPE, all students enrolled in DAPE will have the opportunity for that in-person instruction or that in-person assistance if they need it at our family resource centers. So all students enrolled in DAPE will have the opportunity to get laptops and the technical assistance they need from their home school. A transition specialist will help them work with the homeschool site to ensure that the students have whatever they need with regard to technology to engage in remote instruction, if they're able to navigate remote instruction. If we are working with an extreme needs student and a student that cannot navigate remote instruction on their own, in addition, DAPE has 4 in-person sites that we're activating at our family resource centers where students can attend in person, and they can get access and support from a behavior intervention monitor that will supervise and assist students, and they will have access to any other resources that they need. In addition, breakfast, lunch, transportation, if need be, and of course access to that, that DAPE instructional staff. Students in the DAPE program who attend any of these in-person opportunities at our family resource centers, of course, have access to the tutoring, assignment completion assistance, food services, and any other resource that is provided at the centers. DAPE also continues to provide socio-emotional learning components to our DAPE students as part of the program, and has actually strengthened those elements this year with an improved curriculum for socio-emotional learning, in addition to a behavioral support component. The DAPE staff continues to include behavior intervention monitors at the same staffing levels as we did in 1920, although the DAPE program is presently only a fraction of its size that it was during 1920. Exceptional education services are always provided to any exceptional education student, whether they're in DAPE or not in DAPE. That is our commitment. So I think it's important to note that when we talk about academic continuation services, and again, we're not going to do a full-on presentation, I'm just going to kind of briefly go over just some key points of information, and then we're going to throw it over to questions. When we talk about academic continuation services, what we're referencing are 2 pathways that are under the House of Academic Continuation Services. DAPE is one pathway. You are in an alternative to suspension opportunity. It's a form of abatement. And then the other pathway under the House of Academic Continuation Services is COVID mitigation. You're a student that's been deemed a close contact. You're a student that Pima County Health Department has deemed a student that needs to be in isolation, a student that needs to adhere to district COVID protocols. So we have these 2 pathways. We have the DAPE team, currently 12 teachers, and we want to utilize, and we are utilizing these teachers to work with both sets of students. We've not eliminated DAPE. We are fully committed to DAPE. DAPE is not a USP required program. DAPE is a program that the district created, though, to comply with USP goals. Okay, so it is very much USP driven. I want to be very clear. Though it may not be a mandate inside of the Unitary Status Plan, it is a program that we did create to achieve USP goals, largely around significantly reducing exclusionary disciplinary consequences for students, lost instructional time, and ultimately dropout prevention. So as DAPE students come in to the program or need DAPE services or are assigned DAPE, and right now we have 10, okay, and that doesn't mean that we won't have 10 or 15 more or 20 more or 30 more. We are committed to migrating those teachers back to DAPE, those that are currently providing instructional services for students that are in a quarantine situation or that are in isolation. We would bring them back and make sure that they are providing those services to our DAPE students. But I want to be very clear and I want to be very transparent with our community, with our teachers that are watching. I cannot support teachers having 0 students I can't support that for a week. I can't support that for 2 weeks when we have such an extreme need for instructional services to continue for students that are in isolation through no fault of their own as a recommendation of COVID protocols, and when we have thousands of other teachers that have large class sizes throughout our system and are working day and night in classes, both virtually and in person, where they're dealing with 30 to 35 students. I do think we have an obligation to use this resource that we have at present, that isn't fully staffed with DAPE students, because if they were, if you're talking about full capacity for the 12 teachers, we're at over 390 teachers they would be servicing. That's not the case. We have 10. So this is what we are recommending as an administration. These are the adjustments that we're making. We do honestly share the concern about students that are extreme needs students, or we call them Tier 3, students that are not able to navigate their way on their own, in their home, left alone to do remote instruction. Absolutely, we want to provide in-person support for those students at our family resource centers, students that are struggling with emotional regulation, students that are struggling with decision-making and need access to student support services. Absolutely, we will have a behavior intervention monitor and, if need be, social worker and counselors available for those students. So that is a clarification that we wanted to provide this evening. And we have on hand with us, we have our Director for Alternative Ed, we have our Assistant Superintendent for EDI, and then Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And of course, I am here also to address any further governing board questions or any requested points of clarification.
Board member questions? Ms. Shaw.
Oh, Ms. Luna Rose can go first. I saw her hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Luna Rose.
Yeah, so Dr. Trujillo, I know you said it was a minimal amount of students, but can we discuss about how TEA feels about DAPE and the teachers there and the situation that's happening right now?
I can tell you that we have a negotiated agreement that's very clear about class sizes. And in our commitment to that consensus agreement that we mutually negotiated and brought before this board for an extension just this evening, in the spirit of equity amongst our teachers and in the spirit of being fiscally responsible, I can't support teachers that we've contracted for a full-time basis that are collecting a full salary and have full benefits to have 0 students. That's not in line with what we've agreed to in the consensus agreement. I don't want to speak for TEA. I'm not doing that right now. I know that we're also, these are members of the bargaining unit. But as an administration that works with TEA in the negotiations process, I couldn't support that. We have an existing need in the district. We're not talking about a DIT. A DIT is a positional elimination that's permanent, where we would have to go into the consensus agreement and work with teachers to be able to make them a part of the decision about where they would like to take their next assignment. But because we're not permanently eliminating these DAPE positions, these are temporary assignments to cover an existing need in the district that parallels DAPE, okay, in terms of online instruction, rolling enrollment. DAPE is enrolling students on a rolling basis, meaning DAPE teachers can take DAPE students at any time that a disciplinary incident occurs and a student chooses DAPE. That parallels directly to what we're doing with academic continuation services for COVID protocols. Those students also have the instructional need at any particular given time. So that's my response in terms of, I think we would have more issues with TEA if we went indefinitely with 12 full-time teachers not having full class sizes, and word of that got around to some of our more crowded grade levels like kinder, like 7 through 12, like our freshman classes. And that's why I think we need to be very, very transparent about this and fiscally responsible in terms of allocating the resource to where the need is. And right now, that is inside of the academic continuation services for students that are in the COVID protocols.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you, Ms. Grijalva. Before I begin, I wonder if we could, on this presentation, pull up slide 4. Thank you. Yeah, slide 4. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so Ms. Count's point at the call to the audience about the DAPE program is a perfect example of theory versus practice. Although, yes, at first glance, you can call it exclusionary. If you visit the DAPE program before it's been restructured, you would see that DAPE, as it is now, is absolutely an inclusive environment because it provides in-person, direct academic instruction and behavioral support. I'm making it not exclusionary, but inclusive. So in light of the huge misunderstanding of the value of DAPE, I prepared a statement, and I do implore my fellow board members to please consider the gravity of what has already been put in place without our consent or collaboration. The board has had 2 presentations on the restructuring of DAPE, and I remain solidly opposed to it based on my concerns over the drastic restructuring of the in-person inclusive classroom services that have now been stripped from some of TUSD's most vulnerable students. In doing research on DAPE, I have been reminded through numerous court documents that DAPE was developed and implemented by TUSD in 2015 to correct the disparity problems in the enforcement of discipline in TUSD, particularly relative to African American and Latino students. In other words, the long-term suspension data showed that the exclusion from an in-person classroom environment was more significant for these 2 populations. The research on exclusionary treatment is harmful for many educational and societal reasons, one being that it helps promote the school-to-prison pipeline. It took months of research and communication for TUSD to build and then implement DAPE as a research-based, success-based program. I am quoting the terminology that was used by the administration to sell the program in 2015. The process that resulted in the development and implementation of DAPE involved many more stakeholders than have been involved in these drastic changes that have been made to date over the last few weeks. This time, the plaintiffs and special master learned about the changes indirectly. And very importantly, because DAPE is part of the unitary status plan, the governing board ultimately gave direction to legal counsel pertaining to DAPE on how to proceed before the court accepted DAPE. The board has neither been asked for direction nor has been given the opportunity to vote on the agenda item, which is very disturbing. Once DAPE was implemented, it was closely monitored and the court was updated on its progress through the years. There was a court filing by TUSD on August 24th, which occurred the same day as our last board meeting. The court was not informed of any restructuring to DAPE. The court was not informed that DAPE students would no longer have an in-person inclusive classroom environment within which to receive academic instruction and support along with wraparound behavioral support. Instead, the filing provided a list of alternative education programs, which included DAPE, a USP-originated and funded program serving as an alternative to long-term suspension that permits continuation of students' education in a classroom setting. I am particularly stunned and frankly disappointed that DAPE teachers were caught totally off guard about the restructuring of a program over which they have had a great deal of ownership. TUSD conducted a 3-year evaluation of DAPE, which was presented to the board and also submitted to the court. TUSD's own evaluation of DAPE presents statistics that demonstrate the success of DAPE and discusses the many positive outcomes shown for its students. DAPE's successful completion rates for the 3 years were 89% for 2015, 2016, 87% for 2016, 2017, and 89% for 17-18. The evaluation also showed that there were tangible gains in English language and math. TUSD's DAPE evaluation describes that DAPE services is a viable resource for suspended students across middle and high school. The evaluation report states that DAPE maintained the high level of student attendance and completion rates with the increased participation suggests that the model is successful as an alternative to suspension. During the last presentation on August 24th, the board was told that there is a great need for remote teachers. This was stressed and repeated several times by our superintendent, who also explained that based on the impact of COVID-19 exposed students who are in need of quarantine, the structural changes made within DAPE meets the need. He referred to the newly structured academic or services as academic continuation services, which is virtual instruction, although you can opt in to go to a learning site. In DAPE students, even though ACS is not situated within the virtual academy. So it seems that the perceived needs of one group of students, quarantine students, who are not always, at risk, like these DAPE students, have trumped the needs of our DAPE students. And for educators, this is a horrible and distasteful practice. And the practice makes one group of students and their needs more important than the other group. So we all know that the pandemic has played havoc on our student enrollment, and I understand that there are very few long-term suspensions last year due to the amount of distance learning that was in place for most of the year. Is TUSD now in the position of cutting or drastically restructuring programs due to low enrollment during pandemic peaks? And if so, why has the administration started the process by removing direct services to some of TUSD's most vulnerable students? The enrollment figures for DAPE, as provided to the court and as discussed in the evaluation report, were never reported as being problematic. From the time of its implementation, DAPE was seeing growth and likely could have seen more growth if strategies had been put in place to convince students who declined DAPE services to attend the program. DAPE students are not disposable, but are being treated as if they are. Students who qualify for DAPE do contend with a number of barriers that are best dealt with in a specially designed program with an inclusive classroom environment that is designed to meet instructional needs and behavioral needs. TUSD's proposal was built on research-based best practices. DAPE was put in place based on research-based educational rationale, which does not instantly disappear when TUSD's desegregation court order has been lifted or when more teachers are needed in another area. DAPE children are not, they're not DAPE children do not disappear and their needs don't either.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. So, Dr. Trujillo, let me ensure that I'm reading this graph right. Thus far, DAPE has had 3 students?
We now have 10.
So we have 10.
Yeah,
We've had
and
10
there's 2,
students.
so we'll be back down to 8 because we'll have 2 students that will migrate back. They'll finish their agreed upon time in DAPE, so we'll be back down to 8 in a few days.
Okay, and so do we have numbers cumulatively from the first day of school to date?
Yes.
And how many is that?
8.
8 students. Okay. So the reason why I'm asking is I'm wondering if any of these teachers have been approached to teach simultaneous, since this is to fill an emergent need. Like we have students that are quarantined. They arguably are quite at risk because most of our students, I'm going to speak as a mom for my own kids, they were remote for a long time. And so I know that I've seen some backsliding, some concerns. I know other parents are experiencing the same thing. And so to dismiss the needs of those children when we have teachers available that are not at capacity, I'm wondering if we've asked the DAPE teachers if they would be willing to teach simultaneous.
We can engage in that conversation.
Okay, because the biggest concern is, trying to figure out a way to keep the integrity of the DAPE program. When we started DAPE, we didn't have the kind of online option that we have now at all. I mean, it was a need because our entire district was quarantined and couldn't be in class. So we created this platform that is essentially a classroom online. Now, I understand that that is not a system that works for every child, but if there is a way for us to continue with the in-person while serving and supporting the students that are quarantined, I'm wondering if we can explore that.
Yeah, we can certainly have the conversation. We know that with the general teachers, as we experienced and as you heard, all of you heard throughout last spring, various calls to the audience and emails, the general teacher workforce was not open to simultaneous teaching, and they didn't like it. They were very happy to get back to the model we have now, where you're either in person or you're Tuba.
Oh, no, I understand
But
that, but in some cases,
Yeah.
you had a full classroom on a screen
Yeah.
and then had 10 students in person.
Yeah,
In this case,
yeah,
arguably, you could have, for a period of time, no students in person, or maybe 1 or 2 students in person. And at this point, how many students are quarantined with this, in this 6 to 12?
I think our latest report was just shy of 50.
50.
Yeah, but we have active, the active number, because you have some kids that they'll go get a test and they'll return to school.
Right.
So I believe we're in the 20s in terms of those that are actively receiving the instruction.
So
And
then in theory, we would have how many teachers?
we still have a
12?
staffing issue. This is a staffing issue. And
Right.
there's nothing that Ms. Shaw is saying that I don't agree with. The value of DAPE, the effectiveness of DAPE, to me, that's not the conversation. The conversation returns to the staffing.
Right.
However we got here, we have $1 million expenditure, okay, for 12 full-time teachers, but we have 8 students. Now, whether we take one teacher and just say the need right now is for 1.0 DAPE and have a one single teacher do DAPE until there's more students, we can go that route, and DAPE, is in person. We're still going to have a staffing issue. The resistance has been from those that have reached out, don't change anything. Even though I have 0 students, don't change anything, because more students will be coming. But what about students that are in COVID protocols? Well, that's not the concern. The concern is I'm DAPE, and I'm waiting for kids. Kids are going to come. That's a situation where it's a pure staffing issue. That's the way we look at it. We don't look at it as a referendum on DAPE, that DAPE has been successful. We don't view an increase in DAPE students as success. That tells us that we're misfiring on things like restorative practices and mediation strategies and mitigation strategies we have at the campus. So I think we can engage in the conversation to see if some of the DAPE teachers would be open to doing simultaneous. But you're going to have a staffing issue there either way. Even if you get 60 DAPE students, you've got 12 full-time teachers, so does each one get 5 kids? So you're still going to return to the same staffing issue, which is something we can definitely work together with the parties at the upcoming budgetary process for fiscal year 23.
Okay. I do think if there's a way for us to find a solution, it would be ideal. But quite honestly, we have to serve the students that are quarantined as well. I don't think that because they have to be quarantined, perhaps they're too young to be vaccinated in our home for 10 days and have no educational instruction. I don't think that that's fair either, when we have teachers that would be able to provide support. So it really is a staffing issue. Okay, any additional comments? All right, this was an information item.
Ms. Grijalva,
Ms. Shaw.
I have several other questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So in this one, in one of these slides, I forget which, it alleges that there are 3 students enrolled or were enrolled in August. I visited the DAPE program and I saw with my own eyes that that is false information. And now there's not one DAPE teacher without a student. What more, I understand that some who are involved in discipline hearings, that there have been a number of referrals to DAPE made this school year as a result of long-term suspension hearings. I also have heard that in mid-August, those involved in long-term suspensions were informed that DAPE should not be mentioned during the hearings, which has resulted in no referrals to DAPE from that point forward. This forces me to believe that what is occurring pertaining to DAPE relative to its so-called low enrollment is simply a result of causation, since DAPE referrals were first not processed and then halted. So my question is, if you can please provide the particulars about why DAPE referrals that took place prior to the halting of DAPE services being offered during the hearings were not processed in a timely manner, and why DAPE was not mentioned as an option during long-term hearings from about August 20th forward.
Yeah, the administration obviously does not support that allegation. We're happy to do an investigation. We keep detailed records of hearings. If the board, this is one of those requests for information we can produce for the board. DAPE is in our script for our hearing officers. It's actually in the script where they actually have to inform the families of the DAPE option. I think it should also be noted that the district has done some groundbreaking work around substance abuse and around fights. We moved 3 years ago to a more restorative-based approach to both issues. When you look at DAPE enrollment prior to 17-18 and even into the first part of the 17-18 school year, the biggest reasons that students were in DAPE were for fights and for possession or under the influence of drug and alcohol. It made up a substantial portion of DAPE enrollment. And these suspensions would go on indefinitely. We stepped in and we said, let's take a different approach. We don't want to criminalize addiction. So when you are under the influence, you're not selling, you're not distributing, instead of suspending you, we're going to send you to the nurse. We're going to contact your parents. It's important that you sober up. It's important you go home for the day. But you're going to come back and we're going to sign you up for drug and alcohol prevention with the social worker. When you fight and two students engage in mutual combat, it's no longer an indefinite suspension. Prior to 17-18, we saw students that would get in fights, football field, basketball court, cafeteria. They'd be suspended for 15 or 20 days for losing their temper. But since moving to go home one day, cool off, come back, and your counselor will perform a mediation and you'll sign a contract. And let's restore this relationship. That has contributed substantially to the reduction of students in DAPE. Now, the parties are never going to, and I'll say this publicly, are never going to openly celebrate that. So I'm doing it now, okay? Because if the numbers were elevated and we were looking at 223 for 17-18 and then 300 for 18-19 and then 400 for 19-20, the conversation would be that we are colossally failing students and that we're jump-starting the school-to-prison pipeline. So at this particular moment, it's why aren't more students in DAPE? And so I just don't think that on either end of the situation, the district is really going to get any kind of credit for the work that's been done. I will also say that we are very happy to go back and more than willing to go back on any disciplinary hearing, review audio tape, review scripts. If any family, any student has a concern that a hearing officer omitted information about DAPE, we certainly take that very seriously and have no issues investigating that on a case-by-case basis.
Excuse me, Board President Grijalva and members of the board, we are at the 30-minute mark. Would you like to extend the discussion by entertaining a motion?
I'll go ahead and move that we discuss the item for an additional 5 minutes.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. I move the item. Ms. Count seconds. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item passes unanimously.
Ms. Grijalva?
Ms. Counts.
Okay, so I do stand by my original comments that it is an exclusionary practice. You know, this is something I've dedicated my life to. I'm going to stand by that, and experts agree with me. But that's really not the issue that I want to talk about. What I really want to say, one, is thank you, Dr. Trujillo. You're not getting the accolades that I think that you deserve and that this board deserves, and the investments that we made in restorative practices and MTSS coordinators, counselors, and social workers, which has been huge. So I do want to acknowledge that publicly. And secondly, it really is a staffing issue. And if we look at this as a triage, you know, a crisis management sort of situation that we have kids that don't have the ability to receive their education, that we are obliged to triage this and make sure that they do have that capacity to get their proper education. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Okay.
Ms. Grijalva.
Ms. Shaw.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, Dr. Trujillo, I would assume that, like, of course, it wouldn't be in a, like, these people aren't told, like, don't mention date during the hearing. That happens outside of the hearing, you know what I mean? And so, what has taken place with the referrals, like, if DAPE is not being pushed, what's happening to these students, these suspended students?
Dr. Trujillo.
We would have to go back and investigate on a case-by-case basis. Families have every right to not accept DAPE. Students, it's an opt-in or opt-out. We can't force families to do it. I will return to my original statement that we consider that very, very disconcerting, that there could be, if there is a family out there or a student who experienced a hearing and didn't get adequate information or any information about DAPE, we do consider that a very, very serious allegation that we would investigate. But in terms of what happens when a student doesn't accept DAPE, well, they accept the original terms of the suspension because it is an abatement. We are not invested in suspending students. We want to make sure that we're promoting DAPE as much as we possibly can, and we want to make sure our hearing officers are as well.
Okay, and so for the students who aren't offered DAPE or don't choose DAPE, they're going to be learning on their own, just like the quarantine students, without the ACS happening?
Well, if a family or a student doesn't accept DAPE services, then the original terms of whatever suspension was offered stands. So let's, a hypothetical situation, if a hearing officer is recommending, say, a 6-day suspension for something, and the hearing officer says, I will abate or I will not assign the 6 days of suspension if you agree to go to DAPE, and we can get you enrolled in DAPE and you can complete DAPE, and we will forego this, off-campus suspension. If the family doesn't agree to that or the student doesn't agree to that, then the original terms of the suspension do stand. That does not align with our mission at all whatsoever. All that does is drive suspension rates up, which we don't want. We've never wanted that. We've tried our best to try to keep suspension rates down, which for me is the perception or the allegation that hearing officers are not promoting DAPE runs totally contrary to the commitments that we have made throughout the unitary status plan and certainly with this administration. So I would definitely take a hard look at any situation where a hearing officer, it is alleged that they may have withheld information from a student or family.
I just want to clarify that I'm not saying that the hearing officers are themselves not putting out. I'm saying that they were told not to push the program. But another concern of mine is students who have been, ex-ed students who have found themselves without any services. And I know that we say that they will be learning centers for them, but who is tracking those students and their processing? And honestly, to close down the 3 DAPE campuses that we have, to put those teachers into a virtual setting, and maybe if one student elects to go there to one of the learning centers, that teacher will be there. This is not in line with the original vision of the DAPE program. I really encourage my fellow board members to visit Project More before they shut it all down, because it was really a beautiful thing to go see these students. First, I believe first period they had social emotional learning, discussing concepts such as, it was like courage, I believe, and honor. And the students were very, very engaged. And then second period was math. They moved to a new classroom. It was like a regular high school where they have different teachers, different classrooms for different subjects. And Ms. Labosha was just doing a phenomenal job offering one-to-one services for students to figure out how to understand these complex math problems that I honestly couldn't solve while I was there. And it was, there's nothing wrong with having a small class size for students who are highly at risk. And I understand there's a need with these virtual students who are coming in and out of, needing to be quarantined. But it just makes no sense to completely restructure DAPE, to close down the DAPE campuses, and to abscond with those teachers for something else. Although, we claim that we're gonna still be helping DAPE students, we're eliminating the program, and we're taking away their opportunity to have one-on-one instruction. And I implore my board members, and maybe I should make a motion that we actually have that we're able to collaborate on this. I think this has kind of been thrown together far too quickly, and I think it deserves a second look before we transition DAPE students to this new system on September 15th.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. This is actually an information item, so we can't move any action. But any other comments, board members? Okay, Ms. Counts had to leave. So now we're on item 9.1, future meeting dates and agenda items. Ms. Shaw, if you wanted to add an item on this, to bring back a future item, you can do that here.
Okay. May I add this DAPE program restructuring to the next agenda?
Okay. Any additional items, board members? Okay. All right. So we are now on item 10, adjournment. Thank you very much for all your input, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Stay safe.